Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council. Today is Tuesday, the 14th of November, and we are here in City Council Chambers, John Ferraro Council Chambers. Want to thank our Department of General Services for the installation of the new seat cushions, permanent cushions that have backs as well as on the seats themselves, and hope that that makes your time here more comfortable in the audience. We also wanted to announce that we are live on Channel 35, which is LA City View, which broadcasts our City Council meetings each Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. We meet here in John Ferraro Council Chambers in the third floor of City Hall on each Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, except for the first Friday of the month, in which we meet down in Van Nuys City Hall, if that's closer to where you live, in our effort to bring City Council closer to the residents of Los Angeles. And this Friday we will be meeting in San Pedro and taking a meeting there to the residents of the southern part of the city of Los Angeles. We welcome your attendance there. And we also welcome public comment here in council chambers for general public comment or for items which have been agendized for a public hearing. If you live closer to Van Nuys, you can always testify there, and we can see you via remote from Van Nuys City Hall. We are also webcast through our city's homepage at lacity.org, a great website where there's a wealth of information about your elected officials, city departments, and critical services to improve the quality of your life here in Los Angeles. And that is streaming a webcast video that we have there on the city's homepage. We lastly also are available to be heard via audio by calling Council Phone, which is at 213-621-CITY. And you can dial up that number, listen to the proceedings of the City Council or any of the committees of the City Council as well. Those three ways are great ways to keep in touch. We have council members Cardenas, Gruhl, Huizar, Labange, Parks, Perry, Smith, and Wesson. That is 9 members. We are waiting one more member, and I know that 3 are upstairs in a committee meeting. Council members Hahn, Padilla are both up there. If we could ask Councilmember Reyes, Rosendahl, Weiss, or Zine to join us as soon as one of them does, we will have 10 members, a quorum, and we will begin the meeting. Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Cardenas, Gruhl, Hahn, Huizar, Labange, Padilla, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Labange moves and Mr. Zine seconds. If there's no objection, those will be approved.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
If I can just ask everybody to please, we've started the meeting, so we can try to wind down our conversations. Mr. Parks moves that, Ms. Gruhl seconds. If there's no objection, that is approved. Next item, please.
And, Mr. President, this is Tuesday, and there is a flag salute.
Okay, Mr. Wesson, would you lead us in the salute to the flag? If I can ask everybody in chambers to please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wesson. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Mr. President, do you wish to take a public comment at this time?
Let's run through the agenda first.
Before beginning the regular agenda, there's a request to continue item number 16 to November 21st.
Okay, colleagues, is there any objection to continuing item number 16? If not, we will continue that till the 21st of the month.
And there's also a request to continue item number 76 to
Okay.
November 21st.
There's no objection to that. We'll continue item number 76 to the 21st as well.
On the
item.
regular agenda, items 1 through 27 are items for which public hearings have been held. Items 1 through 4 are ordinances. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Yes, let's hold the ordinances on the desk.
Could I call for special?
Sorry?
Could I just call for special as
Yeah,
well?
we're going to hold them all on the desk right now. Are there specials, Mr. Cardenas? Number 13 for Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Parks?
I think they covered it.
Okay.
13 and 4.
I'd like to make a verbal motion on item 23 to correct a typographical error to substitute Sunset Boulevard for Santa Monica Boulevard in instruction B. And I have that written up as well, Madam Clerk, just behind you. Other specials, colleagues? This is 5 to 27. Did you say 15? 1-5. Okay. Mr. Labange, 15.
On 27, we move both reports.
Okay. We'll move both reports on item number 27. If there's no objection, I'll second that. Any other specials, colleagues? Seeing none, let's open the roll on the balance, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have not been held. Items 28 through 79, 10 votes are required for consideration, and I believe there are cards on 52 and 75.
I think we have a few more than that, so I'll sort through those cards in a second. Any specials, colleagues? Mr. Parks?
I'd ask that we continue 48, 50, 51, and 64 till Friday.
Let's give those numbers one more time. 48.
48, 50, 51, and 64.
Okay. Is there any objection, colleagues, to continuing those items until Friday? Seeing none, so ordered. Other specials, colleagues? These are items 28 through 79. Yes, Mr. Wesson?
46 and 52.
46 and 52 for Mr. Wesson.
And, Mr. President, just to let council know, on items 60, 61, and 62, those items were left on the desk from last Friday, and there are substitute motions on those.
Okay. We have substitute motions on those items. All right, let me sort through which cards we have here as well to call special. We've got item 58, call special for cards from the public. 75, call special for cards from the public. And do we have any others?
And the only other one I have is 52, I believe.
52 we already had, and 60, we'll call 60 special as well. And what number is that? 70. Okay, all right. So on the ballot, we will open and close the public hearing on the balance of them. And please open the roll. Sorry, let's hold, we do have 13 members, so we can move the ordinances. Let's open the roll on all the balance then, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. If we can go back to the ordinances, 4 we're going to call special. And if we can take up 1 through 3, is there anybody who wanted to talk about 1 through 3? If not, we have 12 members, so we have 13. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay. Those are approved. Next item, please.
Next item is item number 80, and that is a closed session item.
Okay.
Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
Let's hold that on the desk as well. Okay.
Do you wish to take a public comment at this time, Mr. President?
Yes, let's take general public comment at this time. Yes, Mr. Rosendahl? 71. If there's no objection, colleagues, we'll send 71 forthwith. Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. General public comment, I'd like to, there's some, I just remind speakers that I know a number of these cards are also from folks who are probably interested in number 80. This is for general public comment, so it's for items that are not on the agenda today. The first of these, and if you'd like me to resort them into item 80, which is about the Jones settlement, I'm happy to do that. Michael Key filled out the first one. Was that for general public comment, or is it for Okay, come on forward, sir. If you come over to the microphone here, you've got 2 minutes to address the council. Welcome to City Council. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council and my fellow members of the City of Los Angeles. My name is Michael Key. I live and work downtown. I'm a member of LA CAN, the Community Action Network. If we can all agree that expertise comes from experience, then I have a PhD in streetology. And I'm here to tell you, Orlando Ward, Carol Schatz Caller, and Mr. Gilmore's property don't speak for me. I also have a JD degree and both represented clients and used in the community where I got sober, Skid Row. Just as I hit my bottom in Skid Row, where after 43 years of using, the disease of addiction rendered me homeless, so too my God has blessed me to find first treatment, then housing, and now 4.5 years of recovery in that same Skid Row area. Housing and services are what's needed. More police are part of the problem in the way that they carry out their duties. There is a big difference between treatment, which means beds, and which we all fund, and recovery, which takes place in the streets of Skid Row. Mind you, we all focus on what you call the problem of homelessness. Understand that in Skid Row, it is the largest recovery community in the city. And we're asking for support for the recovery services, which starts with housing. We're asking that you actually come down and pay attention to the people who are subject to what goes on with this Safer Cities initiative each and every day.
Deborah Burton is our next speaker. Thank you, sir. Deborah Burton is our next speaker, and then Steve Richardson.
My name is Deborah Burton, and I live in I work for the Los Angeles Community Action Network. I have been in recovery for 17 years plus. 5 years of that recovery has been spent downtown. I came to the downtown community because I was seeking affordable housing. I was homeless for 2 years, living in and out of shelters. Finally, I was able to find affordable housing. Today, many of you call me a person who do not want to accept services and housing. That's a lie. Today, don't target me like stopping me and calling me a criminal. You know, everybody that lives in the downtown communities, at least in the Skid Row community, are not drug addicts and dope fiends. We are a recovering community. So please, come to our community and look at the people that you're subjecting to be criminalized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve Richardson is next. Steve Richardson, and then Casey Huron.
Good morning. My name is Dogon, and I've been a downtown community resident here for 44 years, and I'm also a member of LA CAN, where I'm the lead organizer on our community watch team, where I patrol the streets every day for civil and human rights violations upon downtown community residents. Within the past year, we have documented over 200 complaints filed by community residents against the Business Improvement District and CCA, both safety teams, the City Homeless Cleanup Crew, and the LAPD in particular. These violations ranges from moving homeless folks off of city property to illegal searches and seizures, to illegal detaining, assault and battery, property theft, and false arrest. Right? We have also documented hundreds of hours of these violations on film. City Council, so much violations are going on every day that I walk around every day with a camera, a video camera. You know, this community is really under siege, and it's all against low-income folks and homeless folks. And for a lot of my residents where I live at, they refuse to come out of their house because they don't want to come out and be sweated by LAPD. So they are imprisoning themselves in their own house. And for the homeless, it's like a nightmare. You know, 24/7 they being harassed unnecessarily by LAPD, you know. And I've come here to ask City Council to step in and do something about this. You know, when you guys just got through singing the national anthem, I refuse to stand for the simple fact there is no justice and liberty for everybody.
Thank you. Casey Horan? Casey? Is she not here? Okay. Then next will be Sky Anderson.
My name is Sky Anderson. I'm a recovering drug addict, alcoholic. I had 22 years off. I've been homeless. I want to apologize to Mr. Parks. I've been critical of him, but my recent experience with the LAPD, and I want to thank Mr. Garcetti. He's transformed Hollywood into a slum area, into a beautiful city. But I was at the Chinese Theater on Sunday trying to walk on the sidewalk, and I was told I wasn't allowed to do that. And I got upset because I'm a citizen of Los Angeles. I think I have a right to walk on the sidewalk. I went out in the street because the only way I could get any attention of any authority. A police guy came up to me and said, "You can't walk on the sidewalk." I said, "Well, then get me in a police officer, we'll talk about it." The police officer didn't like my attitude, and he kept trying to provoke me into making him arrest me or beating me up or something. Finally gave me a ticket for walking on the roadway. Mr. Parks had programs to curtail the aggressiveness and warrior attitude of police officers. What we need to help the homeless is not housing. We need housing. We need health services. We need drug rehab. We need drug detox and alcohol detox. We need psychiatric services. We need employment training. We need employment job. All these things put together will be a comprehensive program to help the homeless. The current effort of the police department is sadistic and cruel. It's a politics of sadism. The first time they were given the opportunity, went down and knocked down all the tents of the homeless people. I was at the Greyhound bus station the other day, and this woman had a 5-year-old child, and she was terrified that the police or the guard would throw her out in the street with that 5-year-old child. I suggest that the city council people and the police department go out and sleep on a cold sidewalk in the middle of the night and see how it feels. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Our next speaker is Zuma Dog.
Eric, first I have a question. I have a lot of things to talk about today. Can you use some discretion? Can I have like 5 minutes today instead? Oh, just 2. All right, well, first of all, I'd like to announce I'm going to try to do some fundraising for the city. City TV 35, we're going to have a pay-per-view event. Zuma Dog's going to eat 2 scoops of dog food live on camera on City 35 TV, and I'm only going to be charging $2.7 million per ticket. I think that's a good idea, congruent with City Council's decisions lately. Meanwhile, last Wednesday, Eric, you need to pay attention to this. Last week on Wednesday, special item 1 regarding the mayor. He needs to defend the LAUSD AB 1381 in court, so you guys approved $100,000 to pay for that defense. Well, first of all, it's not supposed to be at taxpayers' expense. The mayor, who's wearing 2 hats, one is mayor and one is LAUSD person, is not allowed to be spending city money to defend his own AB 1381, but you approved $100,000 for that. But what I'd like to say, you're going to have to reconsider. Eric, please, there was a Brown Act violation on Wednesday regarding special item 1, your $100,000 for the mayor's LAUSD defense bill. And the problem is it wasn't posted. There's remote locations that the agenda must be posted. It was not posted at these remote locations. It was put in less than the 48-hour notice. And special, you can call specials if they are of public safety. However, the mayor's legal defense fund for LAUSD, a bogus bill that wasn't put to a vote of the people in the first place, is not a reason for that. And again, you're going to have to reconsider special item 1. I think you should take care of it now so it doesn't come back to bite you later for the reasons I said. Now let's talk about real affordable housing. It's very important. Zuma Dog would like to say it is very important for real affordable housing in the city. because what's happening, we got a condo conversion crisis going on. They're building luxury condos, displacing tenants, and then those who have lived lifelong in their rent control apartments have nowhere to live. They're becoming homeless. They're moving outside the city. Noel Weiss, tenants' rights expert, will be coming up soon. Listen to him. Zoom it, dog, for City Council.
Our next speaker is Matt Dowd. Matt Dowd is our next speaker.
Yeah, thank you. Reset the clock. How come I always lose 5 seconds before I even get here? Okay, I talked about global warming last Wednesday because it was 100 outside and it's like 60 in here. But now look, 1 week later, it's only like 60. So we need to get Ron Deaton in here, the $320,000 chief of the DWP, and we can start telling people how to save money and conserve electricity. Simple things like turning off laser printers and phone chargers. If you get 1 million households to turn off 1 or 2 items, we can save like 8 or 10 megawatts of power every day. These are things we need to be looking at. I'm not just here to make a fuss, but obviously, Mr. City Attorney, I hope that's a great call you're on during public comment. Also, I want to mention I saw 3 councilmen up at Hollywood on Veterans Day, or it wasn't Veterans Day. We didn't have a council meeting on Friday. And yeah, Tom LaBonge was up there, Bill Rosendahl, and the council president with Warren Beatty, Annette Benning. And Warren Beatty, I mean, there's a great guy. Great movie he wrote called Bullworth. I don't know if you've seen that, a political movie. And I'm surprised to see Bill Rosendahl up there because that movie's full of words that he finds reprehensible. He's the guy who wrote, "Is you calling me an N? Mother F." So, you know, it's okay to be swanning around with all the Hollywood stars when it suits us, but then when it comes to Chambers, we want to be clamping down on everybody else.
Michael Carrion is our next speaker. And after that will be Chuck Tenon. And then we'll go out to the Valley for Bruce Darian and Van Nuys. Welcome.
Yes, my name is Michael Carrion, and I'd like to address the City Council. Once again, I have a question. I received a letter from Ed Reyes' office, case number 52453. This is 2 weeks already. I've been asking for an answer. Why did I receive this letter? Ed Reyes' office doesn't know. Ed Reyes' office hasn't called me back. I've called them 3 times since I've come up here, and not one return call. It states that we received your complaint and it's already been processed and everything. We achieved something, Mr. Reyes. We haven't achieved anything. Okay? Pictures are right here.
Sir, if you could please address the council as a whole. Thank you.
Well, would the City Council come right here and look at the pictures? So they don't just nod their head and imply that I'm making this all up. Okay? It takes 2 minutes out of your time. 2 minutes, $20,000 a year raise. You don't have 2 minutes for your constituents? I'm a taxpayer. I deserve the right to address you, and I deserve the right to bring these issues to you guys, and you should act on them. If your staff is misleading you, then you should do something about your staff. Okay? I'm not here to bug you, sir, and I'm not here, I don't want to even be here. I've got other things to do. But I get aggravated, and I take it personal when somebody sends me a letter stating that my complaints have been resolved when they haven't. Case number 52453 has been resolved to your satisfaction, has been processed so you guys can clean up your act, and you can say that we did all our work in a timely manner. This letter was sent out on October 20th. That means it's been 3 months. This now is going on 4 months that this problem still has not been resolved. This is exactly the way the city works. Say you did it, put it on paper, and it's gone, it goes away, and that's it. Well, Mr. Reyes has not gone away, and if you have 2 seconds, come and look at the pictures.
Thank you, sir, and we'll make sure that somebody comes and talks to you again. We appreciate you being here, as always. Chuck Tenon is next.
Chuck Tenon, Valley Village. Good morning, council members. It's puzzling to me why there's 2 classes of people in the city, seniors and disabled renters, in the city of Los Angeles, and yet there's two different kinds of plans when they have conversions and demolitions. There's the Plan A, which is affordable housing conversions where existing housing is kind of kept and upgraded, and then there's the Plan B, the buildings that get torn down, the affordable housing that get torn down and it's not replaced. Yet in the conversion ones, gee, the benefits to tenants are better. They get tenant mitigation measures, they get better protection under 1295.2, which is really not being enacted and supported by the city. There's no tenant protection for people that get in demolition situations, the tenants there. They don't get a good relocation package. They have a big problem on that. And I think one of the reasons is when the 1295.2 was enacted, gee, for conversions, well, what about demolitions for condominiums? Because in the 80s, there wasn't that problem. Now there is. But why is there two classes of tenants? They get two different packages, like in Medicare. Some get A and B, and some get B. Why do the demolition tenants get package B? No relocation assistance like they do in the Plan A, no tenant mitigation circumstances. Nolan Weiss has a plan on relocation for the demolition people, a 9 and 20, where they get $9,000 for tenants and $20,000 for seniors to fit 2006 standards of what's going on in this city, not 1980 standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tenen. We'll next go to Van Nuys with Bruce Darien, who is out in Van Nuys City Hall, and then we'll return here for Ted Hayes.
Good morning, City Council, President
Good morning.
Garcetti. Last Wednesday, I spoke regarding the ongoing corruption at the Malibu Pier, and went on to say that there were members of your city council that sat on the state senate while this thing was ensuing years ago, which is Councilmember Cardenas. Mr. Cardenas then went on in item 4 of last week's agenda to grill your chief analyst, administrative officer, on why the city was put in a position as to not understanding the difference between a competitive bond and a negotiated bond. This is disturbing when it was readily acknowledged that few people on the council understood the difference, and yet you were being asked to vote on that measure, which was dealing with $500 million. How could the council be competent in voting on $500 million bond when it does not understand the difference between the two bonds and representing what the interest rates were on that? Mr. Parks was skeptical in moving forward as well as Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Rosendahl said, I'm not going to be backed up against the wall here, and I reject moving forward on this. Ms. Hahn said, Member Hahn said, I was an investment banker, I understand this, and I go along with the Chief Administrative Officer's recommendation that we should move forward on it as it being the best deal. The rest of the council didn't have anything to say about it, and you were dealing with $500 million on a contract that had no competition. The contractor that's building that project did not have any competition and came in right out of the gate at $50 million over budget. You have failed the public. You have failed the public in securing competition on a $500 million job. There's a question here. Why is that? Why was there not any other contractors coming forward? $1 billion job to rebuild.
Mr. Ted Hayes is our next speaker.
Good morning, City Council. Mr. President, my name is Ted Hayes, homeless activist. I have a problem, or you have a problem. On May 31st of this year, I led a demonstration of activists in downtown Los Angeles on Broadway in protest to illegal immigration. I'd gotten a permit from all the necessary bodies in the city to have this event. We needed the sound system for the South Lawn. We needed electricity for the sound system on the South Lawn to have our rally at the end of our march. We was told that we had to go to our councilman district to get permission for that. We went to Mr. Ed Riez, the Honorable Ed Riez of Council District Number 1, where I resided, and we asked Mr. Reyes if he would please allow us access to electricity on the South Lawn. Mr. Reyes said no. We asked, well, why, Mr. Reyes? He said, because I do not agree with your position on immigration. Now, as a city-elected public official, he has no business allowing his personal interest to deny me, a United States American citizen and a constituent in his residence, in his councilmatic district, the right to government electricity to hold our rally. Several weeks earlier, this city allowed citizens from another country to just massively take over our streets, use our electricity. No one said nothing about it. Yet when I went to this man right here, my
Sir, if you can address the council, please, as a whole.
Sir, when I went to this man, my representative, he denied me my basic civil rights. Now, I went to the city attorney's office. I got no help there. I tried everywhere. Nothing's happened. I bring this to your attention, sir. Mr. President, would you please investigate this?
Our next speaker. Thank you. Noel Weiss is our next speaker. Thank you.
Council members, good morning. Again, the old Greek expression, character is destiny. I think it's our destiny, it's your character. Also, the Finnish expression, even the dimmest light can brighten the darkest room. Mr. Labange has a terrific idea. I think it's important that the council take him up on it. That is having a ombudsman who can basically follow up on these public comments. I think it's really appropriate. It's very difficult for each council staff to deal with something like this, and I would hope if Mr. Labange puts in such a motion that perhaps the rest of the council can consider this, because if we have reports coming in maybe every 2 or 3 months, effectively the public, I think, can have a better sense that what we're saying up here is basically meaningful and being responded to one way or the other. And probably that's basically all what it's about. Secondly is the dysfunctionality of our current system, our current planning system, relevant to the needs of the tenants. The tenants, the middle class, forget right now the lower class, the middle class are not being protected. We have the monument to failure, Lincoln Place, 38 acres of vacant apartments. This is not in anybody's interest. We have the potential of Lincoln Place in Wendy Gruhl's district that's going to happen. All it's going to take is a developer or two to basically be bought at the top of the market to end up selling out to a company like Aimco, and what we're going to end up is these people are going to hold off. We have vacant apartments now. We have vacant land where tenants used to live. It's important that we deal with these issues. I think a 9 and 20 solution is important, and I want to see a debate by this council on what these numbers are. It doesn't matter if what we agree with relative to the numbers, ladies and gentlemen. What does matter is that there be a debate so the people feel that the council is listening. And it's hard to know if the council is listening because all your heads are pointed every which way. But I appreciate the consideration, and I think what we have are these numbers in terms of 9,000 and 20,000. 9,000 is what we paid on Maltman, 20,000 is what we paid, what they're offering for seniors and disabled on Lincoln Place. And I think it's appropriate that we begin to confront these issues now if in fact you really want to call yourselves representatives of the people, and so that the middle class basically can be represented. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a point of information, the ombudsman idea did move forward as a motion from Mr. Zion. It is in the Rules and Elections Committee currently, so we appreciate your suggestion there, and that's something the council is moving forward on. Donna Doherty is our next speaker. While she's coming up, I'd like to recognize Mr. Reyes. Mr. Reyes?
Yes, colleagues, before we go too far down on the public hearing list, I need to respond to 2 comments made. One, the first gentleman, our staff has made sure the exterior of the property is clean. That has been done, so City Hall is working contrary to his observations. 2, the property is owned by the school district. We have been sending letters to the school district to clean up their property. They have their contractual obligations with their private folks. We have legal limitations as to how we enter private property by charter, by law, so we are doing our part. It's unfortunate that he comes here to berate my office and myself when we try to explain to him over and over again our roles in different jurisdictions. So we will continue to work with the school district. We'll make them accountable like any other property owner, but the exterior has been clean. The public side has been dealt with, so I want to make that clear. So I want to make sure the listeners are understanding understanding the role of our council and our role as a city entity. On the second speaker, the South Lawn is not in my district. When I was asked for permit for an area outside my district, I don't move in a direction where I don't respect other council district areas. So the South Lawn of City Hall is not in my district.
Sir, if you please sit down. Sir, you're in violation of disrupting this meeting. I'll warn you one last time, sir. Would you please remove him? Thank you. Would you please remove him? Donna Doherty is our next speaker. Sorry, Ms. Doherty. Go ahead, please.
No, well, lots of excitement this morning. I'm really sorry that I didn't make it down for the Education Committee meeting, and because I did want to say Griffith Observatory is open, yes, but because of what one of our city council people said, and I believe that was Councilwoman Hahn, who said at a meeting at the presentation that if you are not going to open all of the doors, the front 4 doors for everybody, don't open them at all. And guess what? They picked up on your comment. Now everybody has to come in the one door on the back side, and I'm using back and front. They don't use it anymore up there, but I'm using back and front because every language has those 2 words in it. Everybody has to come in the back side of the west wing, which they are now saying is the entrance, the main entrance. Please, don't we all know the difference between 1 door and 4 doors? And the 4 doors that we all want to go in are in the front. We have 877,000 students who will go up to that place, and you tell me that they can't get in those front 4 doors? How about the teachers that have mainstream students in wheelchairs, et cetera? They shouldn't have to take all of the students around to that back 1 door. Nobody should be made to go in those doors. And by the way, at the polling site the other night in Brentwood, I found a gentleman there who paid $42 for 4 people for the parking and the shuttle bus just to get up to the observatory, which is everybody. It's free. Isn't that wonderful? It's free to get in, but you have to pay $42 to $50 to $64 for a little group of people to go by bus. I'm so sorry. We've gotten a tremendous amount of publicity on that place. It's incredible, but there are so many things, primarily the parking and the front entrance, that are still wrong.
Thank you,
Hope
Ms.
we
Doherty.
can correct it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments today. Ted Neubauer is our next speaker. After that will be Michael Hunt, and then Sylvia Lynn Hawkins. Welcome, Mr. Neubauer.
Good morning. I'm Ted Neubauer. I'm the director of the Veterans Center for Law and Justice. Mr. Garcetti, when you ran for the office you now occupy, you mentioned during your campaign that there was $100,000 for a fund for affordable housing. Apparently, you are mistaken. According to the LA Times article on November 2nd, B section front page, there is $800 million in federal funds available for affordable housing. 70 million of that, according to that article, has already been diverted. That could not have happened if there was council oversight, but there is none. There is, with those kind of federal funds available, there is no excuse for sweeping homeless people off the street, because you are not, and the council is not, doing its job, okay? For those kind of federal funds available, there is no excuse for not being an affordable housing for every Los Angeles citizen who wants it or needs it. I, for one, and my group is calling for a complete audit of all federal funds available for the purpose of affordable housing, so we know where this money is going or isn't going, okay? Apparently, we are perpetrating the problem instead of solving it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And just a quick response, you're able to find we have an audit of the housing department that will give you the information. Sir? Sir? Mr. Neubauer? There is an audit, an independent audit available from the Controller's Office of the Housing Department. I said there's 100,000, there's 100 million in the trust fund each year, and we'll make sure you have that information so you can see, and there's that independent audit of it. Thank you. Mr. Hunt.
Good morning, President and City Council. One violation of our civil rights, 4215. I'm still here. It's a shame that I'm still here. It's a shame that you guys are still violating people's civil rights. It's really just a shame. I hope by the end of the week that I'll be gone from here, and that Mr. City Attorney, I'm speaking. Mr. City Attorney, can you get off the telephone?
Please continue, Mr. Hunt. Please continue.
Yeah, he should be listening to me. But anyways, you know, like I said, one civil violation of 4215 of everybody's civil rights. Oh, affordable housing? Yeah, what about affordable housing and homeless issues and all of that other kind of stuff like that? My colleagues told me to keep on going. Violating the homeless on Skid Row, just yada, 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 but everybody should be listening. Everybody should be off the telephone. Everybody should be settling our 4215 immediately. The 11th District is in a whole heap of trouble. It's incredible that we can give stars on the Walk of Fame when our districts are totally out of line and things like that. Through investigations, the pepper spray that took place in Venice Beach with LAPD. This is going to be my good week, and next week I'm going to let you guys have it when I get the decision from the court. But you guys are all in contempt of our First Amendment right. Welcome to 35 Channel, the Police Commission, the Outlaw Station. Zumba Dog, Matt Dow, Michael Hunt. We've been down here for the last 7 months. The official station of the Outlaws. Yeah, let's get mean with it, baby. Yo.
Sylvia Lynn Hawkins is our next speaker.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ms. Sylvia Lynn Hawkins. As we talk about all the arenas and the cost of bills and all the arenas and convention centers, we must be aware that people are not paying their bills, whom are the owners. To the public people, they are giving only high costs of gas and light, 10% higher costs on all tickets and events costs. We must be aware that Minuteman is basically not paying his bills on his buildings that he owned in the downtown area, and now he's in need of discounts of gas and lights for his buildings that he's owned. No on 6% paying bills, since all bank accounts are now empty out, since they have been living off of the exchange money, bank money, trade center money, and now they have been caught. Every complexion of black, whether it's brown complexion, yellow, white, or red. No trades with black people because of what they have legally did. No trades in the 58 states, especially 50 states, because of a war that's happening right now and because of what is going on again with black people. Now, how they are paying their bills. With my bank accounts, all money has been out since November 3rd, and they have been broke. They have been living off my last name, which is Hawkins. Therefore, next month, they have to pay their bills of building and mortgage and rent. And they are sitting right among us, faking as though they are Jewish people, and they are black people.
Thank you very
But they are
much.
Councilor Moore.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Thank you. That closes our general public comment for today. I've had a request by Ms. Hahn to reconsider item number 25. If there's no objection, can we open the roll on reconsideration, close the roll, and tabulate the vote?
Actually, Mr. President, I would like to continue that item
Okay.
until Friday.
15 ayes.
Okay, if there's no objection, we'll continue that till Friday. That is the 17th. Again, we'll be in San Pedro.
Right.
And where will we be again exactly in San Pedro, Ms. Hahn?
Such a good question.
Okay, well, we'll make
Where
sure that
will
we
we be? Crown Plaza?
have that for everybody.
Oh, we're going to be at the Cabrillo,
At the Cabrillo Marine
Aquarium.
Absolutely.
Perfect place for a city
So
council
that will
meeting.
be where we are at 10 a.m. on Friday meeting. Okay, if we can return to the items at hand.
First item, call specials, item number 4, and that was called special by Councilmember Gruhl.
Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. And Mr. Fujioka, would you mind coming forward? Colleagues, we have an item before us today. Caught you off guard, didn't I, Mr. Fujioka? We just wanted to highlight, this is some good news, which is, this item is to amend the LA Municipal Code to revise the business tax provisions and to reflect the 2007 rate reduction of 4% and combine various categories of businesses. This is as we know, Los Angeles is the 11th largest economy in the world, and its workers and businesses deserve, we believe, a tax system that is competitive, creates jobs, and helps the economy. And today, this rate reduction demonstrates that our business tax reform that Mr. Garcetti and I worked and the rest of this council worked on as well, that we are actually bringing in more revenue under this new structure. And by simplifying these tax system, we are also hoping to bring more companies, entice them to come to the city of Los Angeles. And I know yesterday we had in Budget and Finance an item, it was the city's financial report, and I read, I know you all weren't surprised, a sentence in there that said, in fact, we had, even with the reductions in the business tax, that in fact we'd had a number of new businesses and revenues go up. And so if you just could give us a quick summary on the item that is before us, and that this encompasses also the 3% we did last year.
First, I'll speak to what you referenced regarding the first financial status report. And at one point, there was considerable concern regarding the various business reform proposals that were first developed in committee, then subsequently presented to the full council. And the concern was that there'd be a loss of revenue. That was a principal concern. Well, in fact, last year we saw an unprecedented growth in business tax revenue, and this year we're on track to receive approximately $11 million more than what we projected in this year's budget. There's I think it speaks to the philosophy behind business tax reform, is that if we do have a more, I'll call it a friendlier tax structure for the businesses in LA, more businesses will come, other individuals, existing businesses will become more compliant with paying their appropriate and fair share of taxes, and in fact, it appears that's happening. We are seeing growth in business tax that is helping us deal with the loss of revenue in some other important categories, such as documentary transfer tax. So that's a very good thing. Today we're trying to implement the automatic business tax rate reductions and the fund class consolidations that were developed by by committee. It was also developed by some council offices, particularly your office. The automatic business tax rate reduction deals with a 4% reduction in the business tax rates. The tax fund class consolidation will reduce the number of classes from 42 to 9. And so, in very simple terms, from 42 to 9, it'll be easier for a person, because what I've heard from the business community is, I don't know where I fit. And it's so complicated. Why can't we do something as simple as consolidate the classes? Well, today we're trying to achieve that simple act of moving it from 42 to 9 classes.
Great, and thank you for CAO-CLA Office of Finance. I'm sure they are here as well. Antoinette, for your work on this. And again, to all the naysayers that said it couldn't happen, we actually demonstrated that if you are a business-friendly city, you reap the benefits as well as the business community reaps that benefit. And so with both the consolidation to 9, and that is a huge change from 42 categories to 9, and to be able to continue to go up each year in the reduction that we had proposed, a fiscally responsible way in which to wean us off that gross receipts tax that isn't always reflective. And I know that we're working very closely with Office of Finance and your office on the pass-through issue and how to also demonstrate that we are trying to be responsible and fair in the way in which we provide taxes for the businesses. Tomorrow, colleagues, We will also be hearing, and Mr. Parks and I are working on the final language, as well as Mr. Smith, on the two-year extension or two-year waiver that you wouldn't pay any business tax when you move into the city of Los Angeles, to, again, add that on to our business-friendly practices here in the city of Los Angeles. So this is something good that we could talk about today, and to demonstrate that we are moving forward to continue to be a business-friendly city. And you have one other thing you wanted.
One last thing, and thank you for recognizing Antoinette Cristoval in the Office of Finance. I think it's very, very important for people to recognize that nothing happens without a lot of city people getting involved in supporting and embracing this reform measure. It was first, the council develops the policy and gives us the direction. But when the day is over, it's the work of a lot of people making it happen. And first and foremost, we need to recognize Antoinette and her entire office, because she has a group of individuals who not only collect the tax, but will help audit the tax, but more important, explain the basis for the tax and assist local businesses in understanding why it's there and what it's used for, and how to properly comply with our laws. And they, from her public counter to her office, do, I think, an exceptional job.
Thank you, and I wholeheartedly agree. And this is the approval today is an early holiday gift, but most businesses will find out after January, so it'll be the delayed holiday gift for them. But we're letting them know that they'll get the after Christmas sales. They'll be able to get that reduction. So thank you very much, and wanted to highlight into my colleague, President Eric Garcetti, who we worked very closely with in making this possible. So thank you, Mr. Fujioka. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gruhl. Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you, Madam President Pro Tem, for those words as well. This is something that I think I knew that there was nervousness when we did it as a council, but this shows each year we pegged it to that 3 to 5%, and the 4% that's coming in this year for businesses shows that we can have an impact and have more businesses that are coming and opening up here at the same time that we're reducing the tax burden. Part of the reason I wanted to speak on this, colleagues, is tomorrow we're going to have a vote, and some of the rhetoric has been that we are anti-business as a city council because of one slice of the economy that we are looking at in terms of hotel workers. The impact of something like this washes across 99.9% of the economy. Every single business has either had their business tax abolished in this city or reduced considerably over the last 3 years. And it's something that I think we can continue to push forward with. So when we're looking at being a pro-business city, I want us to have that balance and that understanding of just how brave this council has been and what steps the city has taken to say, after 30 years of talking about rolling back that tax, that we have been able to do that. It's not easy financial times. Mr. Fujioka has reminded us of the risk that we have to our utility tax. We have never overspent what we have, and Wall Street still rates us the top-rated big city in America fiscally because we never overspend. And under the leadership of our chairman of Budget and Finance, Mr. Parks, we've been able to continue that tradition and put even stricter controls. But reducing tax for businesses here has shown that Los Angeles is not only open for business, but it's attracting them. And we can probably peg the number of jobs that we've had in the last few years, but we know anecdotally from some of the companies that are now headquartering in Los Angeles, certainly abolishing the business tax in the CRA area in Hollywood for entertainment companies allowed Nielsen to come in, which is 300 jobs that average $70,000 and above. 300 jobs that average $70,000 and above. So this is, as Ms. Gruhl put it, a great Christmas present for all businesses, but really for those that are hardworking to keep jobs here in Los Angeles. This 4% reduction building on the last 2 years as well, and we continue to see that. And I want to thank the CAO's office for taking that risk because I think the proof has been in the pudding, and we've been able to do it despite some of our fears. And next year we'll be able, I believe, to do it again if the economy continues to go forward the way it has been. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. There's no further speakers in the queue. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? It's not showing up on the board, I'm sorry. Okay, Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to ask the staff from the Office of Finance to come up, because during the committee, we asked them to bring to the council information on how they're going to advertise this and to share with us so our business community is fully aware of what is going on. And I think it's an issue which we're all very proud of that we're moving forward on, and we just want to make sure it gets as high publicity as possible. Christopher?
Yes, Antoinette Crisval, Office of Finance. We actually have an outreach program that we're putting into place whereby we will be advertising in local media, newspapers, as well as hopefully some of the radio stations to advise the business community of where we are with the reforms that are being approved today, and to just get the message out to them that LA is open for business.
Okay. Did you bring some of those promotional materials so that the council can be aware of what is going out and may be able to share with their business community?
I can certainly provide that. We're actually putting together the print material as we speak, and we will have the information in multiple languages because we think it's important to ensure that the entire business community is advised of those reforms. So I can certainly bring that back at a later date once it's available to the committee.
Okay. I appreciate it. If you could give each office, I think it's important enough that we all take the opportunity to share with the business community, and then as we move forward. And also, colleagues, when this issue was going forward, there were some that were concerned about what the financial impact, and so I just want to draw your attention to the November 3rd CAO-CLA's report that pretty well capsulized just what this means to the city. And I'm asking Mrs. Gruhl to give us the quote out of the financial status report from yesterday's meeting as to just what the impact has been on some of these changes.
I mentioned earlier, I think in the report it said, good news, one of the unusual items, even with the business tax cut that we provided, we still saw revenue increase in that category. So we talked about it in Budget and Finance yesterday as we highlighted it. So we're moving right ahead on that. So thank you. And again, Antoinette, thank you very much. I'm glad you came up to the table because we waved to you to say thank you, but you've done an incredible job.
And I just want to thank my staff, too, because without them, we would not be able to collect the revenue that's due to the city. They worked very hard, and we put a lot of pressure on them to go out there and do their jobs, and they've done it very well, and I'm very thankful for that.
Let's give a round of applause to the Office of Finance and our CAO. Thank them very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gruhl. Mr. Cardenas.
Yes.
Mr. Fujioka, I'd like to go over a little bit of the criticism that we were getting because some of the community in Los Angeles was saying that we were really not doing business tax reform. This was really a paper tiger that was not going to result in true reform or reduction in business tax. So far, what has been triggered in the business tax for the city, say if you were extrapolated on an annual basis? I mean, roughly to the nearest 10 million. I mean, let's get a magnitude.
In terms of the positive impact?
No, I'm talking about remember we were estimating that it might be upwards of $90 million or more in reduction of business taxes in the old world if you just took a snapshot of what people used to pay and the reduction they're going to get in that. The elasticity was the question mark that we were wondering if we were going to end up with more taxes in the city because we're creating a better environment.
In fact, that happened.
That did happen. So,
yes.
So the positive happened, but was there actually a reduction by certain businesses when it came to the amount of taxes those businesses had to pay based on the volume and rate that they paid in the past?
Well, I would say that for
It's on now.
For the small businesses who gross receipts are $100,000 or less, they're actually having to not pay any taxes effective January 1st, 2007.
So they went from paying some taxes to
zero,
paying no taxes.
Effective January 1st, 2007. And that would happen provided that they file timely and renew their license timely. So that represents about 60% for the most part of the businesses that are in our tax base. And we have over 300,000 businesses.
So we basically eliminated the tax on 60% of the businesses in the city of Los Angeles.
That's correct.
Okay.
The business tax.
Now, also, there were some triggers, Mr. Fujioka, that subjectively, if certain things happened, they weren't going to trigger as soon, could have taken a few years. We could have had a trigger as soon as a year or two into this process. How have those triggers played out?
And in fact, Want to help? In fact, the triggers, there was a positive effect to those triggers that allowed us to go forward with the reductions, the 3% and the 4% we're talking about now. And also has allowed us to look at the consolidation of funds. It's been a very positive impact.
Yeah, for example, for fiscal year 05-06, the year that we just ended, the trigger was that if we collected more than $400 million in business taxes, the difference up to 4% would be provided to the taxpayers as a rate reduction, and that is what is being proposed today that will go into effect January 1st.
So we've arrived.
We have arrived.
Yes.
We have arrived.
And the concern was, excuse me, there was a concern that we would lose money as a consequence of making these cuts, consolidating the classes on a go-forward basis that would result in a reduction in that revenue category.
And we would never get the trigger. We'd never hit the trigger.
We would never hit the trigger. And there are naysayers on both sides of the equation saying, one, it hurt the city's economy, but two, the business community said we will never have the trigger. This is just, there's no strength to this program. When in fact, it did happen. We went beyond that trigger. We're able to go to the next 4%. We're now looking at minimum, probably $30 to $40 million more in business tax as a consequence of this program we all collectively sent forward.
And combined, effective January 1st, 2007, it will be a 7.1% rate reduction in total in terms of business
come
tax.
January of next year, which is just in a month and a half, we're going to see a relief of 7.1% of the tax rate on most businesses in the city of Los Angeles.
Right, that takes into account the 3% that went into effect January 1st of this year and the additional 4% that will go into effect January 1st of 2007.
So the reason why I thought it was important that we dialogue on that, because you were right, Mr. Fujioka, there were naysayers who were saying that we were not for real, that these were just funny numbers. I remember people even used a funny math statement, and this is not funny math. This is good work. This is actually a city that is reducing the taxes across the board to businesses. We categorically reduced the taxes dramatically for certain businesses, and we eliminated taxes in the city of Los Angeles for 60% of the smallest businesses in the city. I call that real. That's not fuzzy math. No. That's the real deal. And the fact of the matter is, I resent the idea that people will go out and make those kinds of statements, but they're not here right now saying, hey, we were wrong. We accused you of not being serious. We accused you of not being honest. Yet at the same time, we made an honest effort. Ms. Gruhl, Mr. Garcetti, Greg Smith, myself, when I chaired the committee, we worked really hard. As a matter of fact, we actually had 2 meetings a week of staff. We had a meeting a week of the committee to bring this to fruition. And now we're actually reaping the benefit. Excuse me, the city's reaping the benefit via the businesses reaping the benefit of paying less taxes so that we can be more competitive and we can reward businesses for setting up shop in the city of Los Angeles. So
this is one of the best initiatives sent forward, I think in a very, very long time. And some of you may recall, I had a friendly wager, if I can call it a wager, with a member of the Tax Reform Committee, because there's concerns that we'd never hit that next threshold. And in fact, we did. We hit that next threshold, the next
But Mr.
4%.
Fujioka, from your vantage point, with all due respect, it's a scary proposition to knowingly cut out $90+ million a year in your potential revenue, potentially, when you have communities saying, we want another park, or we want more staff, and we want more police, and things of that nature. So it's kind of a scary proposition when you have the responsibility of keeping the standard of service to our constituents, yet at the same time, we bit the bullet, we did it, you crafted it, you made sure that we followed the numbers, you made sure that we adhered to the formulas, and now we're looking at an across-the-board 7+% reduction in taxes that a lot of people said would never happen. It's happening, and we're looking at 60% of the smallest businesses in the city that do not have to pay taxes. I mean, that's the real deal. And I want to thank all of you for all of your hard work. It was a very tumultuous time when it came to how do we balance all of this stuff. And I want to say, once again, as I said this back then, every mayor, every council member who has ever run for office, every person in this city who's ever been elected have always said, I'm for reducing taxes for business in the city. And this council and including this mayor who was on the council at the time, we did this. So once again, thank you, Ms. Gruhl, Garcetti, Smith, and also myself for actually biting the bullet and making sure that we put the real deal into place. And I guess we're going to go to the next phase next, right, Wendy?
If you remember how this all came about, there was a lot of concern. And we were going back and forth in committee, meeting with the BTAC, and finally our offices came up with a formula and said, let's look at this formula. We feel it'll work. We did our due diligence. Like anything else, we did the analysis, worked very, very hard on it, and brought forward a proposal that was successful. But I think that's what staff does. And so for all of our staff, from the CAO to the Office of Finance to your CLA and this council, have the courage to put the policy together. But then, like anything else, you turn to staff and say, let's put all the nuts and bolts together to this wonderful concept.
Yeah, and it's working. We're being honest with the taxpayers, we're being honest with our voters, we're being honest about the fact that we made a promise and we kept that promise, and you did the work of working on the fine details to make sure that it came to fruition and it's for real.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Labange.
Just a technical question, if I could ask Director of Finance. On Lancashire Boulevard in my district, there's a bunch of businesses. If they don't qualify, they don't pay this tax. That's correct? For the amount of money?
Right. What they would have to do, the 4% rate reduction is across the board. So all of the gross receipts-based taxpayers will receive the 4% rate reduction. They will see that when they get their renewal form for January 1st, which is a
But does everybody at least pay a fee, or how do you know that there's a business out on Lancashire?
Well, we have various ways of finding out who's in business and who's not in business.
But does anybody have like just a straight fee, a flat fee to do business in Los Angeles?
We have some small types of industries that are flat fee, but the large percent of our taxpayer database there's gross receipts, income-based, so they pay a tax rate percentage, if you will, as opposed to a flat amount.
Okay, well, thank you so much for answering those questions, Madam President. Thank you. I got another question when I show that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. There are no further speakers in the queue on that item. Please open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Next, item 15 next.
Can I do an introduction?
Oh, yes, Mr. Labange.
Thank you. Madam President, I just want to introduce a very special distinguished group, part of an international educational program from China, from our sister city of Guangzhou. They're university students here in California, but they're volunteering in the City Hall. Please face the great public of Los Angeles and give them a big hand and welcome them to the great City of Angels, one of our 24 sister city programs. Thank you. Thank you. They get a kiss.
Xie xie. Ni hao. Yes, Mr. Zhang.
Information, if I could, on the
Yes, sir.
introduction. What is so important is I told our guests from China that any member of the public could speak from that microphone. They were so impressed with that aspect of this democracy and how it works. Give them another hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zhang with
Mr. Labange, my son who just returned from Beijing, who speaks Mandarin, is going to introduce the guests that we have, and two of the ladies are interning in my office, and it's part of that sister city. And I know you're the sister city chairperson for the world, but for Guangzhou, and we visited there. Eric, if you'll please introduce the guests that we have. He can pronounce the names a whole lot better than me.
He admitted it at least.
There you go.
Okay, first is Vice Chairman of the Guangzhou Federation of Youth, Mr. She Zhiling. And we also have the Director of the Development and Reform Commission of Guangzhou, Mr. Zeng Jinze. And from the Guangzhou Municipal Bureau of Culture, this is Assistant Director Zhang Jiaji. Miss Aurora Ran from the Guangzhou Investment Promotion Office. And from the Department of Rural and Social Development, Yolanda Chen. Thank you.
Thank you. The 3 years in Beijing has done him well in understanding and speaking Mandarin. Welcome, and thank you all.
And we're working on the Cantonese too, right? All right. Do we have next item number 15 is before us. That was called special by Mr. Labange.
And, Mr. President, there is an amending motion that has been distributed to the council members.
That has been
Motion, if
circulated.
I could ask the CLA to provide me a copy of the amending motion to this item, CLA, please. And I ask Adele Kajalia, our great city engineer of Bureau of Sanitation, to make opening remarks. Also, we have a representative from the city of Burbank who is here, who filed a card, who is going to make some comment as well. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning. Adel Hashkhalid with the Department of Public Works, Bureau of Sanitation. What you have before you today here at Council is the work product of over 7 years of planning and partnership with the community to address our water infrastructure needs for the next 20 years. Before your Council today is the certification of the final environmental impact report and the approval of staff recommended alternative and implementation strategy. Our responsibilities today are more important than ever. We need to continue to invest in protecting and enhancing our waters for future generations of tomorrow. Los Angeles is facing many challenges. This includes growing population, aging infrastructure, pollutions in our waters, shortage in open spaces, dependence on imported water, and lack of funding. To meet these challenges, we need to have bold integrated solutions and provide multi-benefits. And the city's integrated resource plan that you have before you here today provide these bold and integrated resources and solutions. The IRP is a 20-year visionary plan that was developed with extensive community and stakeholder participation from the beginning. The IRP is also a partnership with our sister agencies, mainly the Department of Water and Power. The IRP was developed to meet the city's water needs and challenges. It employs an integrated process that maximizes the use of our existing facilities, resources, while providing multiple benefits in our communities and neighborhoods. Basically, we've looked at 21 alternatives as part of the IRP. They were narrowed down to 4 through a stakeholder process. The 4 alternatives were carried through the draft EIR process that was started back in November. We had the extensive outreach. We had 4 public hearings, many one-on-one community meetings, including within the city and outside the city. And we received over 2,800 comments, and we addressed those comments as part of the EIR, and that's what's before you as part of the final EIR. Working with many of the council members here and the community, we tried to really address all the issues and concerns and come up with a win-win solution. Some of the issues that were raised as part of this process was a sewer that's recommended, that's going through from the LA Zoo area and the Griffith Park area all the way to the North Hollywood area, running in the vicinity of the city of Burbank. There were 2 alignments, one in Burbank and one southerly that goes through Forest Lawn and goes through Toluca Lake. There was many issues raised by the community in Burbank and in Toluca Lake. We worked through extensive community outreach, and we addressed these issues, trying to come up with a win-win solution, and we came up with a recommended alternative that still has a small portion going through one section of Burbank, and we provided the necessary measures to address those. There's other elements of this project and the IRP, including expansion of the treatment plants to allow us to increase recycled water. We have a plan to increase recycled water by 56,000 acre-feet per year. We're also developing policies that would increase capture, reuse, and infiltration of stormwater. I'll require developments that are large developments to put in dual plumbing in the vicinity of recycled water lines, existing and future. And there's many policy directions that are really set forth here that will change how the city is growing and growing in a very smart way to meet our future needs. The future is bright. I think this is a great effort. And we ask for your approval and support as we move forward on the implementation. And this project, this whole process, is part of the city's and the mayor's vision to make LA the greenest city and the most sustainable city in America. I'm available to take any questions.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I'd like to ask if we could have the representative, Mr. President, from Burbank, who filled out a card, the city attorney from the city of Burbank. Adele, if you could stay right there, they'll speak from the podium. Is that okay, Mr. President, for 2 minutes?
Sure. Just specifically the Burbank folks?
Yes, if you
Okay.
could, a representative from the city of
Absolutely.
Burbank. On my time.
Okay. On your time?
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the City Council. The City of Burbank has participated in the stakeholder process, the engineering side process for this integrated resources plan, specifically the Glendale-Burbank Interceptor Sewer component. The issue that Burbank brings to you today, it presented in a letter dated October 31st, 2006, a 25-page letter identifying numerous legal deficiencies in the final environmental impact report. This letter was followed up by a letter dated November the 9th. I distributed that to the council this morning, which identifies mitigation measures which must be incorporated into the document, notwithstanding the document's many legal deficiencies. The problem with this project is that the final environmental impact report fails to adequately address those segments at a minimum running through the city of Burbank. It fails to address the impacts against the proper environmental baseline. Rather, it evaluates them against other alternatives without identifying the true impacts to the residents and to the businesses located along that alignment. We were just presented about 5 minutes ago with a revised or amended motion, which is stamped Exhibit A. It addresses the November 9th letter from the city of Burbank and gives some attention to the mitigation measures that are a minimum for the city of Burbank. The problem is that Burbank will have to function as a responsible agency. We have entitlements that have to be issued for this project if the project's going to run through our rights-of-way. That includes encroachment permits or easements. And this environmental impact report is inadequate for the city of Burbank to perform that function. The mitigation measures which are set forth in this alternate or amended document provide only for Burbank to review actions of the city of Los Angeles when, in essence, Burbank must approve real property rights, either as an encroachment permit or easements for this project, and the EIR is inadequate for those purposes. We also have with us today, and he has submitted a speaker card, Mr. Mark Dillon of the firm of Gatsky, Dillon & Balance, who will also be making comment either now or during the
Councilor,
comment
I was
period.
just asking as a courtesy for the city, the public hearing process has been closed. This is a representative of the city of Burbank. I was allowing that on my time. I don't know what additionally your consultant could add to it. If they feel they could add something, look at me and tell me you feel could add it because it's on my time, or did the councilor cover what was necessary?
Well, we could speak now or during the comment period. My understanding is...
Comment period's over with. This is on my time now. The comment period was the start of council.
We've had a public hearing on this in committee.
So, for the record, Burbank opposes our environmental impact report. That's what you just stated, right?
Burbank is concerned that it is legally deficient, yes.
Okay, good. All right. I wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to get that on the record as a city
Thank you, Mr. LaBonge.
adjacent. Thank you so much for that.
We appreciate that.
Mr. President, members, we work real hard in this city. We have relationships with all our cities. We treat 27 other cities. Is that correct?
Yes, Councilman.
We 27 other cities.
29 other cities.
29 other cities throughout our regions. We work cooperatively, and we do work cooperatively with the city of Burbank and Glendale and San Fernando and other municipalities in the San Fernando Valley. We understand that Burbank has a concern. I went out to their city council about 11 months ago to discuss general issues. We worked closely to realign what was they were very upset about, alignment that went on the Rancho area near Buena Vista. We realigned it all through Griffith Park, all through the Forest Lawn Drive area, and then to connect back to Riverside Drive, which solves the second district challenge of the park, Woodbridge Park, that it will go into the Caltrans yard. We've worked real hard on it. Members, I ask you to support this EIR, and I know our city attorneys from both those cities will be working together to resolve it, and I hope it's resolved in the best interest of the city of Los Angeles. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Our next speaker is Councilmember Cardenas, and then Councilmember Reyes.
Thank you. If we continue at the current rate of treatment, when do we foresee implementing the GO if triggered projects?
For the expansion of the treatment plant, I believe, Councilman, based on the growth projections by SCAG of 2004, it's looking around 2025 is where the expansion is needed at the Tillman plant.
Now, when you say expansion, are you expanding beyond the current footprint of the Tillman plant site or not?
It's the expansion for the additional capacity, staying within the footprint of the plant, within the berm that was built for flood protection.
We're not going to be taking on any other property. We're not going outside of the current Tillman plant area, et cetera.
For the expansion of the capacity for the future, it will stay within the footprint. However, there's one project that is recommended, which is providing a storage for wet weather protection. That's going to be outside under the cricket fields, and that will be underground, and the cricket field will be restored back to its use.
Okay. And now, will this potential expansion allow the Tillman to comply with future TMDLs and also the renewal of the NPDES permit?
Our plan is to do whatever is needed to comply with the effluent limits, and that's why the recommendations are called if triggered. There is some recommendation to upgrade the treatment technology to meet the new regulations, but our plan is to do what's needed and do it in time to meet these requirements, yes.
Okay, and you're fully prepared as laws change, Sacramento could increase the requirements, et cetera, we'll have to meet those requirements in the future, correct?
Exactly. I think this is going to be a very flexible document. We cleared it to the extent of what we think is the technology that's available, but the implementation will be done to allow us to comply with existing future regulations for wastewater discharge and also for recycled water use, which is also an important factor.
Okay. What's the city doing to mitigate odor controls at the Tillman plant?
The city is actually working actively on odor control. One of the things that we have implemented recently is chemical dosing in the treatment plant itself, but we are also evaluating other mechanisms such as adding scrubbers as needed. But right now we've implemented recently, over the last 6 months, I believe, additional chemicals that are being added for odor control.
Do you know if there's been a reduction in calls from the community about the smell?
It's not something I have available to me. I can check, I'll let you know.
That's fine. Will the area, if we were to increase the capacity, potentially up to 20% above what it is today, correct?
It'll probably go from 80 to about 100, yes.
Yes, okay. So if that were to be the case, would we expect on a volume basis a higher amount of odor problems, or actually we would have less per volume because the technology would be better than the technology we used in the past?
Odor control is important for us, so we're going to take care of it regardless of the expansion. But I think if you expand the plant, the new technology will even make it much better. Odor control now is part of all design practices, and all new technology have that into it. So it's something that will be part of any expansion, any design.
So most odor control on our older plants are retrofitted odor control measures. What you're describing is whatever we build new is going to have odor controls in the initial design, which means it should be much more efficient and less incidence of odor problems with the neighboring community.
That's true. It will be incorporated as part of the actual construction. It will be state-of-the-art technology,
okay.
Yes.
And what's the rough estimate of the GO if triggered projects cost?
The GO projects, the GO if triggers about $1.3 billion for wastewater. And that's basically what the number is right now, estimate.
Now, the current process has endured quite a few public meetings, many participants from community members to various organizations, governmental organizations, et cetera. Would you say that this document is soft on that kind of activity or is strong on that kind of activity?
It's extremely strong. I think this is a a process that really has embraced the community and the community input from the beginning. That's what's so unique about this process. We involve the community, the entire community, not just the environmental groups, but the actual community, businesses, to get involved and to provide us input. So, and the community was represented across the city, not in one area of the city, and people from the vicinity of the treatment plants were also represented. So it's very strong, and that's really what the strongest thing about this process. It was a community-based, stakeholder-based process.
Are the treatments that are going on in our system, are they just for the city of Los Angeles, or does it include other benefactors, other cities, other communities?
We serve, the city of Los Angeles serves additional 29 other agencies, including Burbank, Glendale, San Fernando, and others.
So actually the constituents of the city of Burbank will in fact have some benefit from this?
Yes.
Do they currently have benefit from it?
They do. The 10% of their wastewater goes to our wastewater system.
Okay, so they're actually benefiting from the system and the process that we're engaged in talking about right now?
The whole region will benefit from what we're doing, yes.
So it's not like we're actually traversing or involving other cities only on the implementation end, we're actually on the treatment and the final product end of it, they're actually benefiting from it as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Reyes is our next speaker.
Thank you, Council President. First, I want to commend you and your staff. This is a far different sanitation department from 10 years ago. And the fact that all the effort's been committed, demonstrated, and results in this report and how the community participated is significant. But I did want to add a couple of items. In your GO projects, you plan to add wastewater and recycled storage capacity to the LA Glendale facility. I request that the design of this project, that you take into consideration the river master plan, since your project will be located within the proposed improvement corridor. When and if it gets started, we can have updates at the ad hoc river committee so that we can see the relationship, the reinforcement of the master plan goals and objectives, and perhaps use this as a catalyst to demonstrate how industry and how development can actually complement the riverway. Two, in your goal policies, in terms of actually seeing progress, there are so many leadership projects that have come into play that can be implemented in other cities. When we talk about coordination between sanitation, departments of planning, building and safety, the city attorney, CAO, my point is we have many environmental challenges. How we achieve those measures is going to be how we coordinate with each department, because sometimes we're not aligned with how we move forward on these policies. So as Chair of Plum, perhaps starting in 90 days to get everybody to warm up to the idea, is to actually have ordinances drafted by the end of '07 or in '07 so that we can actually see these changes occur. If I may, Council President, you know, there are such examples where you have different size developments where they're required by building and safety codes to build out their lots a certain way, when in fact it flies in the face of our objective in capturing the stormwater runoff, capturing the contaminants, using landscaping, using swales, and how we design our urbanscape. That's where I think these departments can come together, reinforce that message, and actually have it in the books through the ordinances so that we can change how the city does business, which would become much more environment friendly and achieve those mandates of the TMDLs that are before us. And I'd just like to comment on that, sir.
Yeah. I agree with you, Councilman. One of our goals is the implementation and probably change a lot of the ordinances and the codes to allow us to do some of this capture and infiltration. We're already in discussions with the Department of Building and Safety. They have reviewed a lot of these things and willing to work with us. They're going to review where this applies or it doesn't apply. They're going to look at safety also. But one of the things our department at the Board of Public Works and our director, Rita Robinson, really have instructed us to reach out to all these departments and work with each one of them. We've contacted all of the departments being impacted. We've talked to them. They were part of the process. But we're taking it now to the next level, which is the implementation. And now we're going to start working on specifics, ordinances. We're going to talk to planning. We're probably going to talk to the planning commission, to the staff, talk to building and safety, and hopefully start crafting these ordinances so we can make this real and make the changes as part of the fabric of this, of the requirements that we have here.
And what I'm saying to you is, as chairman of Planning, Land Use and Management, where planning and building and safety reports to my committee, if you would be so gracious and generous in looking at how these issues can be translated into code changes, working with the CAO and the city attorney to understand the cost factors, the legal factors, and in 90 days, which would mean the beginning of March, have that first presentation in my committee, in Plum, so we can get this off the ground, because we all have great intentions, we all have busy schedules, our work programs are beyond description, but the fact is we have to get to it.
We'll come to you, Councilman, to Plum Committee and the Energy and Environment Committee and give an update on implementation and within 90 days.
I'll have my staff send a memo out to the different departments with these objectives in mind.
That'd be great.
And if I may, Council President, I just want to, I see Scott Wilson out there in the audience. I want to thank him for his leadership and how we blend in and understand the strengths of our environment, our ecology, and managing a city like ours. So thank you so much. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. Anybody else wishing to be heard from the council on this?
Mr. President, if
Yes,
I can add
please.
one more thing, as the colleague from Burbank has echoed, they gave us a letter back on the 31st of 2006, and it was presented at the Energy and Environment Committee, and also another letter on November 9th. We've really worked hard with the city of Burbank under leadership of the council here, Councilman Labange and Councilwoman Wendy Gruhl, tried to resolve the issues. We've looked at all their comments, over 6 letters that we've addressed through the final EIR. The October 31st letter, we looked at the whole, what's being raised, and we disagree with their position. The EIR, the final EIR actually addressed this new hybrid and change. It's already included. The construction is starting from the same construction shaft site. There's nothing new. This is being tunneled. And we were, as a generous city, we actually committed to voluntary measures to ensure that what we're doing does not impact the community, residential community, including the city of Burbank. We've introduced to the record our comments on the letter that was submitted October 31st for the record. And for the November 9th letter that we received, we actually have addressed most of these mitigation measures as part of the EIR and as part of the monitoring and mitigation plan. And on top, the council here introduced a motion to even strengthen that. So I would thank you, and I think we have done everything possible to address the community's issues and concerns in a positive way, including our neighbors in Burbank. Thank you.
Thank you. If we can please open the roll on the item, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Forthwith, if there's no objection to that. Thank you. We've had a request from Ms. Perry to take item 75, is it, out of order?
Thank you very much. Why don't you go to those? Thanks very much, Mr. President. I just wanted to take the opportunity to highlight a resolution that's going to declare November, or has declared November, as Lung Cancer Awareness Month, and it's the leading cause of cancer death in the United States, causing 30% of all cancer deaths, and will kill more people this year than breast cancer, prostate, colon, liver, kidney, and melanoma combined. It affects 3 times as many men as prostate cancer and will kill twice as many women as breast cancer this year. 50% of the new lung cancer cases will be diagnosed at a very late stage, and only 5 of those individuals will live beyond 5 years. Of the roughly 172,000 new lung cancer cases diagnosed each year, more than 60% of those individuals are people who never smoked or smokers who long since quit. So after you stop smoking, you know, your lungs never go back to completely being normal, and former smokers still remain at an elevated risk. Other cities and counties who will be proclaiming November as Lung Cancer Awareness Month are Moraga, Orinda, Lafayette, Palo Alto, Daly City, just to name a few. And today we have Stuart Michener here from the Lung Cancer Alliance. He's continuing the work of his wife, who was a tireless advocate for lung cancer research and awareness. And if you could just take maybe one minute, no more than two at the top, just to say just a few quick words.
Well, we'll open the public hearing on this. Actually, we haven't had a public hearing, so Stuart Michener,
Yeah.
like to address this?
Councilwoman Perry, I want to extend my personal gratitude for your continued support to raise awareness over the most lethal of all cancers and the woeful underfunding of research and new and more effective treatment technologies. Scarcely more than 1 year ago, my wife Nancy stood before this very council and delivered a speech that would have been worthy of Patrick Henry. She was, at that point in time, in the very advanced stages of the disease. Since that time, she fought it with as much courage, grace, and dignity as you might imagine. And if you'll indulge me briefly, I'd like to read some excerpts out of last year's speech. And I quote, "First of all, I would like to thank Councilwoman Perry for the honor of this recognition and also say how much I appreciate the attendance of the other council members, along with my friends and husband. I stand before you today as living proof that anyone can get lung cancer. As a very healthy, active, even athletic individual who had never smoked, I was absolutely stunned by a diagnosis of lung cancer at age 44. I've been fighting this battle for nearly 6 years and have far from won the war. I'm currently at a standoff, and unfortunately, no one, not even my highly skilled doctors, know how long it will last. But one thing we all sadly know is that there is no cure for this illness. As in the case of most non-smokers, neither of my doctors know what will ever cause the lung cancer, and in essence, it really doesn't matter. I am so tired of answering the question, did you smoke? And the answer is that by the time a person is diagnosed with the illness, it is far too late whether to worry about whether they had smoked or not. The City of Los Angeles is to be congratulated for publicly recognizing that this disease is deserving of compassion, attention, increased funding, and is far more than the sum of its multiple and many times unknown causes. I thank you for your time and for your continued support.
Thank you very much. Anything else, Ms. Perry? We're good? Okay. Let's open the roll on this item, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Thank you. We have items 52 and 80 have had requests to take out of order. Ms. Perry, did you want to do 80 next, or do you want to do 52? Okay.
President, I would like to move 10 minutes on each side on that issue prior to going in closed session on 80, if that would be all right with my colleagues.
Mr. Reyes, on that?
Council President, I would like to request, if it's timely, to reconsider 45 and 46 for 60 days.
Okay. Let's open the roll and reconsideration for those two items before we go. 46 was already continued?
I'm sorry, 45.
Oh, okay, so just 45?
Yes.
If we can reconsider on 45, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote. Okay.
15 ayes.
That is before us, and continue to what date?
60 days on both items, 45 and 46.
Okay.
And the new date then would be
The 16th?
January 16th.
January? Okay, there's no objection. Those will be continued to January 16th. Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Ms. Perry, so 10 minutes on each side?
Yes, please.
Okay. We'll start with the for side. I will invite folks forward. We'll set the clock at 2 minutes per speaker, so that'll allow at least 5 from each side. But certainly, if you only use up a minute, we'll just continue through and get as many as 10 speakers in. Mark Rosenbaum is our first speaker, and then Gary Blassie, and then Don Garza. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's on the against side. We'll start with those two and one other person from the for side in just a moment.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Rosenbaum. I'm legal director of the ACLU, one of the counsel for the Jones plaintiffs, along with Carol Sobel and Catherine Lehman. Before I begin my statement, I want to explain that many homeless, many providers, and many clergy and civil rights leaders who had intended to speak to you this morning on behalf of the settlement and for increased services for the homeless are not before you because we were informed that there would be no hearing today, and it was only at 4 p.m. yesterday afternoon that we learned that the hearing would go forward. I'd like to briefly make 3 points in hopes that this council will foster a healing process that stanches the polarization of this city. First, no city in this nation, none, does less for the homeless than the city of Los Angeles. Opposition to the settlement from many homeless, many service providers, and many citizens concerned about the desperate plight of the veterans, mentally ill, disabled, victims of domestic violence, foster and other children, all of whom constitute the overwhelming majority of the homeless, has concentrated on the absence of necessary shelter, rehabilitative, and job services as part of the settlement. I want to apologize for that omission. Early on, I was told by representatives of the mayor's office and then city attorney's office that it was unnecessary to the settlement that those services would be otherwise provided. I regret that concession. I ask this council to commit to the course of necessary and cost-saving services that every other major municipality has pursued. Second, it makes no sense to limit the settlement of Skid Row to just Skid Row instead of this entire city. Homelessness is not the province of any one area or the province of any one council district. It is the demonstrated evidence that a policy such as this one that focuses on only one part proliferates the homeless without reducing the problems by one iota. May I say that all we have in this city to give, all we have as individuals to give, is our love and our compassion. And I ask that this city end the criminalization of the poor where there is not adequate shelter and begin a process of ending Skid Row altogether.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Gary Blassi will be our next speaker.
My name is Gary Blasey. I'm a professor of law at the UCLA Law School. I delivered to each of your offices today and to the clerk here in the chambers the results of a study that we released yesterday. I hope you'll have a chance to look at that. If by your actions here today you signal to LAPD that they should begin 24-hour around-the-clock sweeps of the homeless on the streets of Skid Row, you should know the consequences of your vote. The fact is that there is no unused shelter capacity in Skid Row. And every shelter is turning away people every day. Therefore, you are not deciding whether people will sleep on the streets. You are only deciding where they will sleep on the street, and if, in addition, they will be subjected to the loss of their possessions, their blankets, their protection from the element, and that sort of thing. If people have a real choice, they do come indoors. At the last page of our report, I have a picture from the 80s. For a short period of time, LAPD actually offered homeless people a voucher, and I was there and other people were there to observe that. When people had a choice, they took those vouchers. If you give people a real choice, they will not, contrary to many allegations, refuse shelter. It's important that until there is and enough actual available accessible shelter, that you not make the lives of the homeless worse. And meanwhile, we should be doing something to make them a little better. As Mr. Rosenbaum said, this city, in comparison to other major cities, has the harshest laws in the United States against the homeless, and as a proportion of its budget, does less than just about any major city in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blasey. Our next speaker is Frank Tamburello from the Four Side. Frank Tamburello. After that, we'll go to the against side with Estela Lopez, Jorge Escutia, and Malcolm Kwan.
Good morning, Council. I can't follow up eloquently on the legal points made by my predecessors, but I do just want to make some points generally. We're against the arrest of homeless people at any time for the simple act of sleeping or sitting on the sidewalk. If you're declaring a shelter crisis, as you are in item number 74, you shouldn't be able to arrest people at any time. If you think that it's easy to get people shelter, I can give you a couple of examples of how difficult it is. Recently tried to get a colleague from Hollywood into affordable housing he had applied for several months earlier. He was rejected because he has a temper. Tried to get moving assistance for a family. The the county wouldn't give her the moving assistance money until they saw the lease from the landlord. The landlord wouldn't give her a copy of the lease until he saw the money. We were able to get around that situation, but if you multiply this by several thousand, you'll have an idea of how hard it is for people to get into housing. I suggest instead of just listening to us today, you get a randomly chosen group of homeless people with no advocates, neither anyone from the developers or the business community, and ask them what they think the solution is to their problem. I want to tell you also that if you continue law enforcement sweeps of the homeless, you're going to lend credence to the idea that homeless people are second-class citizens. And we've already had an increase in the number of violent incidents over the years committed by people from the public, including attacks with baseball bats, people being burned, homeless people being attacked simply because they were thought of as subhuman. Then the last point I want to make is that this state unfortunately passed Prop 83, which is going to further reduce the number of places that sex offenders can stay. In Iowa, they already passed a similar proposition. Sex offenders now cannot stay in the homeless shelters. By passing Prop 83, you're going to have more people to keep track of than you ever dreamed of. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. From the against side, Estela Lopez will be the first speaker, and Jorge Escutia and Malcolm Kwan.
Good morning, council members. Estela Lopez, Executive Director of the Central City East Association, the employers of 15,000 people in downtown Los Angeles. Some of them are here with me this morning. These are the people who, in the mainly food-related businesses of Central City East, put the food on the tables of many restaurants in this city and in this region. These are the people who depend on Central City East for their livelihood. These are working families. These are union jobs. And they depend on you, council members, to protect them, to keep them safe from violence, from communicable disease. I am here proudly standing with them today, asking you to reject a settlement that would create and forever put in place fear in the hearts of these people who have to walk across the sidewalks of Central City East every day to earn their living. We are here asking you to support them, the working men and women of Central City East. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Mr. Escutia.
Good morning. My name is George Escutia. Good morning. My name is George Escutia, and I represent the employees of Los Angeles Cold Storage. We are located at the corner of 4th Street and Central Avenue. We are a 110-year-old public refrigerated warehouse with 85 union employees. I also happen to be a resident of the city of Los Angeles, living in Council 14. I would like to make the following statement. We, the employees of Los Angeles Cold Storage Company, strongly oppose a proposed settlement between the city of Los Angeles and the ACLU. It is unconscionable that the city will agree to would allow people to live on the street. It is unsanitary and unhelpful to both the people living on the street and the employees that work in that area. The policy of containment has been a failed policy, and this settlement is just a continuation of that failure. We urge you to vote for the stakeholders in this area and against this settlement.
Thank you, Mr. Kwan.
Hello. My name is Malcolm Kwan from the Umea Rice Cake Company at 4th and Crocker Street. Umea is an Asian snack manufacturer with a history of over 80 years here in LA. And although we've established a nationwide market for our product, the fact is that our over-the-counter sales have all but disappeared. Actually, I can't blame our customers for being too scared to come to visit us, as I was recently cornered by a homeless person threatening to stab me. A couple weeks ago, our warehouse was damaged due to the homeless using it as a backdrop for their fires. The CCA and our SLO have been greatly helpful to mitigate the drug activity around our area, but cleaning up urine, feces, and ash is still a daily chore. By sanctioning off our area, we are worried that these safety and sanitation issues will will only become much worse. And the city will be sending a clear message, not only to us, but to all other businesses in our district, that this is simply not a conducive environment for small, medium enterprise, and especially the food industry. Umea was here long before this problem, and we feel we are not welcome anymore. There must be a more innovative solution, and we trust the council to make clear their priorities for this area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Casey Haran, and then Casey Haran, and then Steve Richardson, and then Beth Steckler. You're the next on the next side. On the other side, excuse me.
Good morning. I urge you to support the settlement. There's two problems with flooding Skid Row with police officers and aggressively targeting street-dwelling people for sitting or sleeping on the sidewalk. It's inhumane and it doesn't work. It doesn't reduce crime and it certainly doesn't keep people off the streets. Arresting people who live on the streets for sitting on the sidewalks will not revitalize Skid Row or reduce petty crime, as these same people will bounce right back to the streets and engage in the same behavior. Yes, they need to sit and they need to sleep in a matter of days and even hours. The disorder in Skid Row stems not from inadequate policing, but from the fact that more than 1,700 men and women live on its sidewalks in third world conditions, with no access to housing, health care, or social services. This disgrace, this civic and humanitarian disgrace of Skid Row, is due to a dire shortage of housing and services. It's due to 20 years of government paralysis and neglect. The culprit here is not the man and woman on the streets, most of whom are living with a severe mental and/or physical disability. The culprit here is us. Chronic homelessness is not a law enforcement issue. Substance abuse is not a law enforcement issue. Mental and physical illness is not a law enforcement issue. The best crime-fighting strategies in the world will have no impact whatsoever on getting chronically homeless people off the streets. Everyone agrees the police matter. The question is whether the LAPD should be implementing a policy of making a large number of arrests for sleeping on the streets or low-level minor disorder as their primary law enforcement strategy. The answer to that question is a resounding no. Cuffing, arresting, and jailing people simply for being sick and having no home is a disgrace. It's counterproductive and a glaring waste of resources. Do the right thing. We can bring everyone together. Let's focus on the solution.
Thank you very much. Just an announcement. After the public hearing, we will be going into closed session, colleagues, and considering any of the legal issues. I believe some people will be speaking to this, but we're not expected to have a vote on the settlement today, both by what folks in the council have been talking about, the mayor's letter, which we just received, as well as the different parties in the lawsuit. So this is a chance, again, to have a public hearing again, to be updated and briefed on the legal issues. And so after this public hearing, we will go into the closed session for that. Our next speaker is Steve Richardson.
The name is the General. I was born downtown LA in 1962, excuse me. This is my community. Because of housing and services, I now have a place that I can call home. I am one of the people that you won't have to accept services, who didn't have to accept services, understand me, and I accepted them because I'm no different from anybody else that want the same services. As lead organizer of Community Watch, I witnessed Stephen Van Zyl of SRO Housing doing outreach with LAPD, telling residents that he had housing and beds for anybody that wanted to accept them. Within 30 minutes, the lobby of the Russ Hotel, owned by SRO Housing, was filled with 60 to 70 people who you say don't want services, aggressively trying to assess these housing services, but not one person was housed. I volunteered on bed count, the bed count project, for almost 2 months. For the past 2 months, I've been out there and I've been conducting bed counts, and I have yet to be able to get a bed. Right? And don't let me or people like me stop making us criminals, so that you can give away our community to the highest bidder. And I also like to turn and ask the folks who came and spoke for Central City East, what are you so scared of? What are you afraid of? What are you going through out there that's making you so scared? Huh? The homeless is the ones that's being victimized. They're the ones that's being beat across the head and drugged into jail, and their property taken every day.
Excuse me, Mr. President, he should be directing his comments to the council.
Sir, could you please direct it to the council? Thank you. Beth Steckler is our next speaker. Ms. Steckler is our next speaker.
Thank you. My name is Beth Steckler, Policy Director with Livable Places. I work downtown on Spring Street, and I would just like to implore you to use your positions of power and influence and access to bring the community together to solve this problem. We know how to do this. It's a question of resources and political will. To be spending scarce city dollars on enforcement makes no sense at all. People are not going to not be homeless because you've arrested them. We've identified this as a problem for a very long time, and in every other city, people recognize that the police department is not an effective servicer or manager of homeless people. The Prop H, I know a lot of you did a lot, worked very hard for Prop H, and 62% of the voters agreed that Prop H was a very good idea. Homelessness was on the top of the list of what people wanted to address. So I'd really implore you to use this opportunity to not direct more resources to the police department, but rather to direct more resources to housing homeless people. That will take care of our problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Don Garza, followed by Patty Berman, and then Russell Brown.
Clock is going. I hadn't said a word. Can I please have my 2 minutes back, please?
Sure, she'll set it to 2 minutes if you could, Madam Clerk.
Sí, lo pusimos. Póngalo en 2 minutos si usted puede, secretario.
It has, okay, okay, yeah. Anyway, here we are once
Aquí
again,
estamos otra vez,
speaking on an issue
hablando de una cuestión
that should have been resolved 20 years ago.
que se tuvo que haber resuelto hace 20
Here we are
años.
discussing, are we going to put
Aquí
the homeless in
estamos
jail?
hablando si vamos a poner las
Are we gonna
personas
put them
sin
in
hogar
housing?
en la cárcel, si les
Are we
vamos a
gonna
dar
enforce the law?
viviendas, si vamos a hacer cumplir la ley,
Or are we going to let people rot on the street to
o si
die?
vamos a dejar nada más que las personas sigan en la calle hasta que se mueran.
I'm a little confused now
Estoy un
because the
poquito
mayor
confundido ahora.
gave us a letter saying that he's going to
Porque el
withdraw
alcalde
this whole thing.
Nos dio una carta
But one
que
thing I'm
dice que
not
iba a
confused
retirar
about,
todo esto,
and I
pero
will
una
never
de
be
las
confused
cosas que no
about,
estoy confundido y que nunca voy a
is
estar
that to
confundido
allow
es permitirle
this settlement, as it was going to be agreed
este
upon,
arreglo como
to
si hubiese
only
sido un
do those
acuerdo,
things that you want to do
solamente
between the
hacer
hours of
las
9 p.m. and
cosas
6
que ustedes quieren
a.m.
hacer
in Central City East is
en la
tantamount
ciudad de
to a
Centro
crime
Oeste.
against humanity,
Es un
tantamount to
delito en
ghettoizing
contra de la humanidad
a population
para
and building an
utilizar
open-air
la
concentration camp
población
where people can
para hacer
die
un campo
from
de
antibiotic-resistant
concentración para
infections.
personas que se pueden
This is
morir
not a scare
por
tactic.
infecciones.
This is
Esto
happening
no es
around the
una
world.
táctica, eso está
We are
pasando en el
seeing
mundo.
antibiotic-resistant
Nosotros
tuberculosis
vemos
spotty
tuberculosis
even in LA.
también
It's
en
cropped
Los
up in
Ángeles.
South Africa. We've got methicillin-resistant staff all over the place. You have people in housing in Central City East that are immune-compromised. You have people that are on the streets that are immune-compromised. This settlement, the way it was going to happen, there are people here that are in recovery, that may not be sick at all, may not be immune-compromised, and those are the people I'm speaking for, and those are the person I'm speaking for on my own behalf. So please, never accept an agreement like this and that is a crime against humanity. That is what this settlement would have been.
Patty Berman.
I'm a resident at 4th and Main downtown, but I'm not speaking for myself right now about this settlement. I represent a young lady who lives in the Ford Hotel at 7th and Gladys, who is also now my little sister. I advocate for her and for all the hundreds of other children that I work with down in that area. They do not need their neighborhood turned into a ghetto. We are not advocating for police brutality. We are not saying that criminalization is the answer. What we're saying is that creating a ghetto in that area is absolutely not the way to go. The proposal as it stands sets aside an area and says, this is okay. The people who live in this area don't count. We can put all of our problems right here and let it be like that. Well, these kids live there. They need something else. If you're going to decide that the answer is not to provide services and not to provide housing, and that you just want to throw everyone on the street, then at least spread them out over all the streets so that our kids don't have all of the burden. This is the wrong answer. Absolutely the wrong answer. Please, think about doing something that will help all of us.
Russell Brown.
Good afternoon. My name is Russell Brown. I'm president of Downtown LA Neighborhood Council. I'm also a historic core resident, chair of the Residents Association of Downtown LA. The Neighborhood Council discussed this, and we represent all of the stakeholders of downtown, including the Skid Row residents, the affordable housing people, the social service providers. We support the position of our social service providers that this is not the way to go. Homelessness is not a crime. However, 30 years of neglect, lack of services, failed urban policy is a crime. It cannot be solved, however, by containment, quarantining, no new services, and no new housing. We really need to create a partnership to work with everybody in the community, both the law enforcement community, the social service providers, and the housing advocates. In that, we're 100% agreed. There are 16,000 people who live and work in Skid Row East, Center City East. Do not they have rights and privileges that also need to be balanced? Does not all of downtown hope and demand a better way? As I attended a street encampment meeting in Skid Row, one of the Center City East homeless residents said, if the best that the city and the ACLU can do is to allow me to lay unconscious and unprotected on the sidewalk, no thanks. I can do that by myself. The city knows that they can do better. The leadership of the community knows that they can do better. And we know in our heart and soul that we must do better. Thanks.
Our last speaker on that side is Carol Schatz.
Thank you, members. Carol Schatz, president of the Central City Association in the Downtown Center Business Improvement District. The reasons you rejected the settlement have not changed. Why are we here? The precedent that this decision sets, stating that it is a violation of the 8th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, cruel and unusual punishment if someone is arrested for sitting, lying, or sleeping on the street, is a very serious precedent that will come back to haunt you forever and a day. 2, equal protection. Why should there be a ghetto of despair and hopelessness only in downtown Los Angeles? No. We say no. We have created, against all odds, a real downtown community. We have 7,000 new units of housing, 7,000 under construction. We are giving you tax revenues. We are creating a community. A lot of them have left. A lot of them are still here. They deserve the same quality of life that any of you have and what you want for your own constituents. The ACLU, I find it very interesting that they're talking about a solution. When they brought this lawsuit, Did they bring a lawsuit against the county for not providing enough money to deal with this problem? To provide solutions to this problem? No. Did they bring a lawsuit against the CRA for its containment policy? No. They brought a lawsuit against 4118, which, practically speaking, gives people the right to die on the street. That is what it does. If that is what you want to support, that's what you're going to get.
Thank you.
I want to remind you of the H word, and that is, if you wouldn't allow this behavior in front of your own homes, you cannot support this settlement. Thank you.
I know our president, Mr. Garcetti, indicated we would have 10 minutes on both sides. We've exceeded that 10 minutes. I'd like to read the names in the record of those who were here, those opposed and those in favor of the settlement. The listing of those who were against the settlement: Tara Devine, Raquel King, Catherine Brennan, Larry Rausch, David Yo, Tony Tuck, Carrie Ann Walters, Robles Sandana, Antonio Castillo, Geronimo Gomez, Jose Mendoza, Tom Thomas, James Austin, Irma Arianes, Hope Magana, Tom Gilmore, Ed Rosenthal, Zuma Dog, Mark Loge, Brady Westwater, Claire DeBrique, Kate Bartolo, Wendy Beasley, and Kristen Stewart. Those were all against the proposal. Those that were for the proposal: Linda Valverde, Joe Thomas, Anicia Menegobal, Michael Kay, Kevin King, Carrie Gatun, Ted Hayes, Kate McCarthy, Matt Dowd, Alex Marati, David Corona, Noreen McClendon, Mike Hunt, Greg Senegal, David Bush, Tom Gilmore, they put this in the wrong, this was general comments, James Gravitt, Barbara Rowe, Ted Neubauer, Javier Rivera, Jim White, Kent Smith, these did not have whether they're for or against, David Robinson, Steve Diaz, and Gracie Taylor. Thank you. Now, colleagues, as Ms. Perry, do you want to speak that there were, I think, noticed by Mr. Garcetti that we would not be voting on this item today, however, that we would be going to executive session if required, but that this item would be continued. If we feel we want to go into executive session, I've received a request from Mr. Rosendahl. Before we do that, there is one speaker on item number 17 to reconsider that item. So I look to you, Ms. Perry, of our next steps.
I'd like to just say a few points very quickly, just for an informational purposes, since I recognize I'm not going to be taking a vote today, just to note that the City Council had taken an action previously by voting to pursue the appeal of the Jones case, and we will continue to work together in our working group to discuss and work towards drafting an ordinance that considers the issues raised and address the concerns that are not addressed with enforcement. I think people have many views. They were expressed here today, but I don't think anyone believes that downtown Los Angeles and the high concentration of housing and services is the only solution to the entire region's homeless problem. I can also say with some degree of confidence that special rules to apply in one area and not another do not seem appropriate. And I am proud to continue to represent an area that has the lion's share of homeless services for the entire region, because this community is the permanent home to thousands of people who are formerly homeless, who are now living with dignity and with services to support their needs. And I believe that they want the same things that we all want: a community that is treated with respect and that is safe and clean. And I, along with members of the Ad Hoc Homeless Committee, are going to continue to work towards creating a new ordinance, Mr. Rosendahl and Mr. Garcetti, along with our other partners, that make sure they are updated and address the issues raised. And I look forward to seeing what we will discuss today in closed session.
Thank you. Mr. Weissar, you have some questions before we would go into closed session?
Yes, thank you very much, Councilwoman. I would just ask that my colleagues in the Ad hoc Committee on Homelessness move forward rather quickly on redrafting a new ordinance to replace the existing 41.18D, because in fact, what we have right now, and I know we're not going to act on the settlement, what we have right now is the quarantining of allowing the enforcement of a modified 41.18D. The quarantine of that area has about half of my district. And I'm hearing a lot from residents as well as business owners from those areas that we should not overburden this area with allowing the enforcement of 41.18D in that area. In fact, what I hear from all of us and all the council members and the advocates, and I think both sides on this issue can agree, is that homelessness is a county-wide regional issue and should not be concentrated in that area. So we have, as a city policy right now, a policy to quarantine it in that area. I would ask that we move quickly with the motion that Mr. Rosenthal introduced and I seconded back in May to rewrite 41.18D, move forward on that quickly, and hopefully that would allow us to move away from quarantining this in a certain section of the city of Los Angeles. Also last week, I introduced a motion that will ask the appropriate departments in the city attorney's office to craft a encampment ordinance that would not allow encampments and help those people who are right now in encampments get the services they need. I think that, coupled with the redrafting of 41.18D, will get us on a path of getting a solution
Creo que se nos va a llevar un camino
assist
para poder
the
encontrar una
efforts that we're
solución
undertaking.
para ayudar los
And
esfuerzos que se han
I
comenzado a
also
hacer.
ask
Y
that
yo
the
también pido
tensions that have
de que
arisen
las detenciones
on this
tengan
issue
una
be
razón en
lessened.
esta
One of the
cuestión.
speakers said
Una de
that
las
we need to
personas
work
que habló
together
dijo que
on this issue.
necesitamos trabajar
So
juntos en
irrespective of
esta
the language we
cuestión.
use,
Entonces,
let's
sin
not
contar
continue to
el
pit
lenguaje que
ourselves against
usamos,
one another.
no
Let's
empecemos a
use and
estar
let's
en
all inform
contra
us
uno
with
de
what's actually
nosotros,
happening
sino
and
vamos a
not be
usar lo que está
misinformed.
pasando
Because I
y
think
que
there
no
is a lot
seamos
of misinformation.
malinformados, porque yo creo
Let's
que
be
mucha
honest
de
with
esta
each other and
información
move forward
seamos
accordingly.
honestos y
And I think we should move forward
sigamos adelante
without
de
putting
acuerdo
first
a
criminalizing
lo que
our homeless
tenemos.
population, because I
No
think that's the
tenemos que
easiest thing to do
criminalizar
at this time. Thank you.
población de personas inmigrantes.
Mr.
Creo que es lo
Rosenthal.
más fácil de hacer
Mr.
ahora.
Rosenthal.
Señor
Thank you,
Rosenthal.
Madam President.
Gracias, señor
First, I want to thank
presidente.
Jan Perry
Primero, yo le
for
quiero
her
agradecer
overall
a Jan
leadership
Perry por su
as chair of the Ad
liderazgo
hoc Committee on Homelessness.
como presidenta del comité de las personas inmigrantes.
I want to thank my colleague
Yo le
also,
quiero
Jose
agradecer a
Huizar,
mi
for his
colega
thoughtful comments here.
también
And I
José
want to thank
Huizar
everybody
por su
here
comentario.
on
Yo
all
les
sides
quiero
of this issue
agradecer
for
a
being
todas las
here.
personas
As
por
I'm
estar
standing
aquí.
here
Yo
right now,
estoy
Santa
parado
Monica
aquí,
at
Santa
3 o'clock
Mónica,
in the
a las
morning
3
on
de
Wednesday,
la
tomorrow,
madrugada.
will start citing people
Mañana
on
a
their
la noche
beach
van a
and
poner
throwing
las
them off the beach.
infracciones
What they will do
en
is
la
throw them
playa y
into my area in
sacarlos
Venice. This is a
de la
regional
playa.
issue. It is
Entonces,
actually
lo
a
que
national
pasa
issue.
es lo van a
And with
poner
the hope
en
of
mi
the
área en
Democrats who
Venice
said
y
they're for
estos
social change and they've taken over the House and the Senate, maybe we'll see more leadership out of Washington on what's truly a national issue. It's not a city or a county, it's a national issue about homelessness. And we'll get the proper resources so that we can have permanent housing with supportive services for those that need them. And the others get more money for social services so that we can work together on all this. But thank you all for your discussion. And let's hope we get some help out of Washington as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Mr. Zumadog wanted to make sure we noted that his was general comment, not against, and Mr. Hayes indicated he was against. Okay, so colleagues, I believe is a request for us to go into executive session. I've not forgotten, Mr. Rosenthal. I just want to make sure whether we are going into executive session or not. So a request to go in executive session or just to continue this item? Sorry.
Madam President, we continue this item. Will we, when will this be rescheduled? Because I think there is a need, given the ambiguity of where we are with the settlement, that we at least should hear from our city attorney's office.
Ms. Perry was going to, I think, ask us to go into executive session.
going to make a request on behalf of the Office of the City Attorney to go into closed session.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Before we do that, if we can, hold this item on the desk, if we could, and just very quickly take item number 17, reconsider that item. Madam Clerk, open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the votes.
Thank you, Madam President, for that.
Yes, Mr. Aronson? Yes.
Name's Robert Before it starts, if I could, excuse me,
Mr.
sir.
Aronson, could you hold on 1 minute, please?
To remind the council members that this is a fair hearing matter requiring their heightened attention to the speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Aronson, and I'm appealing the West LA
Yo estoy
Planning
haciendo
Commission's
una apelación
decision
de la Comisión del
to
Oeste de
convert
Los
a
Ángeles para
4-unit
convertir 4
apartment building
unidades, un
into
complejo de
4
departamentos
condominiums
en 4
with no
condominios
guest parking and no beach impact
sin
zone parking.
estacionamiento.
Can you hear me?
Keep talking.
There was no notice at all of the West LA Planning
No hubo
Commission
ningún
hearing, no
aviso de la
public posting,
Comisión de
no
Planeamiento,
public
no ha
mailing.
habido
Planning
un
Department says it's
póster,
not necessary.
no tampoco
Nevertheless,
correspondencia.
107 people within
Dijeron que no era
the
necesario, sin embargo,
radius map, 500 feet, are
en el
opposed to this
radio.
because it's too dense and not enough parking. Also,
tengo
I would
firmas
ask that this
porque
be sent back
no hay
to
suficiente
the Planning
estacionamiento.
Commission.
se
Item
mande a la
52 on
Comisión de
today's agenda,
Planeamiento en el artículo
Los Angeles
52.
Municipal Code 12.95.2F. That analysis was never done.
Este análisis nunca se ha hecho.
Councilmember Wesson and Reyes and my council member have moved to enforce that. That was not done in this case. And on the issue of parking, we've got a specific plan that requires both guest parking and beach impact zone parking, neither of which have been complied with. The planner in charge of this case found that they were required to provide beach impact zone parking.
Se les requirió que
The
tenían que
supervisor
proporcionar el
overruled that
estacionamiento
and said
para
that
la
the code
playa y se
doesn't say
negó
what
y
it
dice que
says.
el código no dice
Thank you.
eso que dice. Gracias.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, we do not have a card from you.
Señor Weiss, no
Madam
tenemos
President, can I
tarjeta
ask
de
the city
usted.
attorney on this particular issue?
Mr.
Le
Weiss, we
puedo
do not have a
preguntar
card from
algo.
you. Mr. Weiss, do you want to speak? But we do not have your card.
All right, I will fill it in. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mr. Rosendahl and council, my name is
Señor
Noah Weiss. I'm
Rosendahl, yo me
one of
llamo
Bill's
Noah
constituents. I'm
Weiss.
not here representing anybody other than
Soy
myself,
uno
but
de
by,
los
as
votantes
circumstances would
de
have
Bill.
it, we have on
No estoy
today's calendar Mr.
representando a
Wesson's
nadie, pero
motion
tenemos
to basically
en la
provide for the
agenda de hoy
incorporation of
la petición del
1295.2
señor
provisions, the fact that they're
Wesson.
not being enforced by the city attorney. That came out in the Housing Commission hearing. Now, Bill, this is an exact circumstance right here. This is a conversion. 1295.2 applies in this situation. The fact of the matter is that the planning department, based presumably on the advice of the city attorney, did not enforce the vacancy decontrol provisions of 1295.2. This is a reason, council people, to reverse and grant the appeal. And since the council goes by what the council district member wants, I would ask, addressing the whole council, that Bill Rosendahl direct on that ground alone, because you signed this motion, Bill, today on Herb Weston's motion. You signed it, and you said, we need to enforce 1295.2. Well, you know what? Enforce 1295.2. Do it now, do it in the context of this situation, and send it back and make them do it, because they didn't do it, and it's wrong to do it, and you know it's wrong to do it, because you
Madam President,
signed the motion. Thank you.
the
That's
speaker should direct his comments to the council as a whole.
Thank you. Public hearing is closed. Mr. Rosendahl?
Yes, Mr. City Attorney, just a clarification of the last gentleman that spoke. Do we have the opportunity to send that back to planning for further consideration, or just heard his comment and go forward?
Today is the last day on this appeal, and it's up or down.
So if I were to ask my colleagues
Entonces, si yo le hubiese
to
pedido
send
a
it
mis
back, we
colegas
could
que
do
lo
that?
manden,
No.
hubiesen podido
What can we
hacerlo.
do?
No, ¿qué podemos hacer?
When you mean up and down, what is that?
Cuando usted
You
dice
can
que
only
es eso,
vote
arriba para
for it
abajo.
or against it, that's
O
all.
puede
This is the
votar en
last day for
contra o a
council to
favor.
act.
Es el
Otherwise,
último
council
día
loses
que tiene el
And if we were
Consejo
to act
Municipal
against
para
it, what would
actuar.
happen then?
Y si no hacemos en contra, ¿qué va a pasar entonces?
I would have to ask our land use attorneys as to
Yo
what's
le voy a
next.
tener que preguntar a los otros abogados qué es lo que pasaría después.
Could we have a land use attorney give us an answer on that?
A ver, nos puede dar un
Mr.
abogado
Rosendahl, I
una
know we
respuesta.
called the special for the one comment card,
Yeah, okay. All
because
right.
we have the other city attorney, so if you
appreciate
want,
that.
we can hold it on the desk if you would like, or if a brief conversation.
Just 1 second conversation, and then we're out of here.
Mike LeGrand. Hi, Mike LeGrand, Acting Chief Zoning Administrator, Department of City Planning. Part of the issue is the case before you for condominium conversion outside of the motion that's being discussed is an existing case that was following the existing rules in place at the time, process similar to hundreds of other entitlements similar to this. So one of the issues we have from a staff perspective is the discussion of 1295, which we'll be reporting back to your committee on, and the Plum Committee and HCED to discuss and work with the city attorneys on implementing those provisions in line with the intent of the council. This case did not fall under those rules and has been evaluated consistent with other cases. In addition, the vacancy rate finding that is in the code also requires more of a citywide impact on the rental housing be evaluated. So the vacancy rate alone isn't a standard that we would deny a map on. We also look at the tenant relocation package to make sure the relocation is being handled, the condition of the building, if they're meeting existing building codes for the conversion. So there's lots of other things that come into consideration. If we were to deny a condominium conversion, and the vacancy rate, if we apply 1295, would only be one additional consideration.
Well, thank you all for that. Thank you. We're finished.
I was just saying, Mr. Rosendahl, there's been a request to have all the items before you go into executive session, so if you want to go on, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we were
This is
going.
perfectly fine. I appreciate what they said, and we can go back to the thing.
Great. Okay, thank you. So we'll vote on that item now. Okay. Madam Clerk, open the roll on item 17. Close the roll. Tabulate the votes.
14 ayes.
That item has been approved. There has been a request, colleagues, before we go into executive session, to take a few of the other items that are here and the concern of losing a quorum on items. I think we will go next to item, there's been a request to go to item 52. Mr. Wesson.
Señor Wesson.
Thank you, Madam President and members.
Señora Presidente y
You know,
miembros,
when I was first elected, one of the
cuando me
most
eligieron a mí al principio,
pressing issues
una de las
before me
cuestiones
was
que más
condo conversions.
presionaba era lo de
Ed
conversión de
Reyes and
condominios.
myself and others had a series
Yo
of
y
hearings
otros hemos tenido
throughout the
varias
city of Los
audiencias en la
Angeles, and
ciudad de Los
with the help of
Ángeles,
this
y
council,
con la
we
ayuda de este Consejo
enacted
Municipal,
several
nosotros
measures that we
promulgamos
believed would
varias
help
medidas que
balance
nosotros creemos
this
que
thing out,
ayuda a balancear
such as
esto,
ensuring that there's money for reimbursing people on moving expenses, closing loopholes in the municipal code to end abuses, tenant rights protections, creating a task force to develop and create new housing, and a study on rent stabilization, and a couple of ordinances that address the Ellis Act. And I thank you for that. But what we also discovered was that since 1981, there has been a law on the book. There's been a tool in our tool shed that was brought to our attention that gives the city the ability to delay or deny condo conversions based on the vacancy rate for renters being less than 5% and the cumulative impact, if it is significant. I just wanted to briefly share with you, Mr. Reyes was very concerned about this condo issue. In your district, Mr. Reyes, your vacancy rate is 1.8%. The highest vacancy rate on this council is in Ms. Hahn's district, and it is 3.7%. Mr. Rosendahl was concerned in his area. The vacancy rate in Bill's area is 2.6. And there's the two, but you do have somebody tied with you at 1.8, and that's Mr. Weezer. So I ask you to support today a substitute motion that instructs the city attorney's office to enforce the code that has already been on the books for 26 years. It also ensures that the council is given twice a year an update on the vacancy rates for each community area plan, which is all law already on the books, not a new law. And also, it would require the planning department to report back to the council in 6 months and let us know the impacts of this enforcement. And lastly, we will ask the city attorney's office, city planning, building and safety to report back to us in 45 days on the feasibility of using the vacancy rate that we use where it relates to condo conversions to the other piece of the pie for us, which is demolitions. So with that said, I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. I understand that we do have some cards on this item. Would we like to have a few minutes to open? How long would you like to give for public comment?
¿Cuánto
5
tiempo
minutes
quisiera usted dar
to
para
5?
comentario público? 5 minutos.
10 minutes total.
10 minutos en total.
Then, okay, then we'll do 1 minute each.
Bueno, vamos a hacer 1 minuto cada uno.
Problem is, we don't always know. Well, okay, 10 minutes, and we'll go through that. Let's have Larry Gross,
Bueno, 10 minutos.
Sashi
Larry Gross,
Hanneman, and Chuck
Sashi
Tenon.
Hanneman y Chuck Tenon.
Larry Gross, Coalition for Economic Survival. After 7 months of advocating for this, I say finally. Condo conversions and housing demolition crisis continues to bring increased hardship to the families in this community. We're up to 12,000 conversions and demolition-related evictions since 2001, over 8,000 of these since 2005. Because of this crisis, it's incumbent upon this council to take swift and meaningful action. We're glad to see you're finally taking steps to implement this provision. We urge that you extend this to demolitions. That's a major factor in the loss of affordable housing in the city of Los Angeles. We want to also thank the leadership provided by council members of the Housing Committee, particularly council members Wesson, Reyes, and Garcetti, with a special thanks to you, council member Rosenthal, for being the first one to step up to the plate on this issue. Thank you. We urge adoption of this motion.
Nosotros queremos la adopción de esta petición.
My name is Shashi Hanneman. I'm a
Yo me
staff
llamo
attorney at
Shashi
Public Counsel.
Hanneman. Yo
We're
soy
a
abogada.
nonprofit legal services corporation that serves low-income
Somos
people in
una
LA County.
corporación sin-
I'm here to support the motion to immediately implement Section 12.952F of the LA Municipal Code.
sin lucro.
And also thank you for the leadership in
les
support of
agradezco
this.
del
A huge part of the
liderazgo
problem
que
is
apoyan
demolitions
esto.
and small lot
El
conversions.
principal
We need to ensure that
problema
demos
es
and
la
small lot
demolición.
conversions are also included
La
in these
conversión.
protections.
Necesitamos que también
1295.2F is a
protección.
sound tool to implement the Housing Element General Plan to discourage demos and conversions resulting in loss of affordable housing. Thank you for your support of this motion to immediately implement this provision.
Gracias por el apoyo en esta moción y que se implemente de inmediato este estatuto.
Council members, Chuck Tenon, Valley Village.
Concejales,
I really want to commend
yo
Herb
nada
Wesson
más quiero decir al
and his
concejal
committee
Wesson
for
y su
really
comité
pushing on this.
por
You know
haber
what? The two
presionado
classes
esto.
of tenants,
Dos
conversion
clases
ones
de
and
inquilinos
demolition
en la
ones, should be
conversión,
combined
uno
as
de
one.
los
So there is
demolición
no
debería
class
de
difference, and they get the
combinarse,
same thing.
entonces no hay
It's very
diferencia de
important.
clases,
Demolition
tienen lo
should be
mismo, es muy
part of
importante,
this.
demolición
And
debería de ser parte
the
de
city
esto.
attorney always tells you what they can't do. Well,
Y
you
el
know what?
fiscal
They
municipal
didn't
siempre
enforce
dice qué es lo que pueden hacer. Bueno, no
1295.2
hicieron
for a long time. Why? Maybe they didn't want to know the numbers on the vacancy
Porque no
rates,
pusieron
or they'll
el
tell you, well,
1.95.2
gee,
por mucho
we'll get
tiempo. ¿Por
sued.
qué?
Well, you know what? If you have a passion for what's right, then you know what? You should stand up and enforce what's right. And Herb Wesson, thank you, and thank you, council members. Put demolitions on the same thing. It's no different. Tenants have rights, whether they tear something down or they convert it.
Derecho a demolerlo
Thank you. Our
o
next
a
speakers will be
convertirlo.
Beth Steckler, Linda Magadam, and Kate Bartello.
Thank you very much. Beth Steckler, Policy
Gracias,
Director
Beth
with Livable
Steckler,
Places. I want to urge you to support
quiero
this
pedirles
motion.
que ustedes
This is a very, very
apoyen esta
important
misión.
step
Este es
in
un
developing a
paso muy
comprehensive housing
importante
policy
en
for the
desarrollar
city.
una póliza
Building
para
new
la
housing is
ciudad,
really
de
important, but as a
construir
SCAMP
nuevas casas
study
es
showed
muy
us earlier
importante,
this
pero como
year,
el estudio lo mostró
over the
antes,
past
en
5
los
years,
últimos 5
we've only had a
años,
net
nosotros hemos
gain
tenido
of
una
200
ganancia neta
units
de 200
because we have lost
unidades,
so
porque
many units
perdimos
to
tantas
condominium
unidades
conversions.
por
Those were
conversión a
rent-controlled
condominios.
units. So in order to really get
Entonces,
ahead,
para
we have to
poder
preserve
seguir adelante,
what we
tenemos que
have,
preservar
and
lo
you've
que
taken
tenemos,
steps in terms
y
of the
ustedes han
residential
tomado
hotels, and this is a
pasos de
very
acuerdo
important
a
step on
hoteles
condominium conversions.
residenciales, y eso
We
es
have to
muy
do those
importante
things
en
and
conversiones de
also
condominios.
continue
Tenemos
to
que hacer
build.
eso y también
So I would
continuar
also urge you to
construyendo.
look
Entonces, yo
at
también
the
les pido
small
de que
lot
ustedes
ordinance. The
vean
small
las
lot
ordenanzas
ordinance was
pequeñas.
not around when this
No
condo
estaban
conversion law was
antes
originally
cuando se hizo
drafted,
la ley de
and we do have
conversión.
existing tenant
Entonces,
buildings that are
tenemos
being subjected to
que
conversion.
algunos están sujetos a conversión, algunos de los inquilinos.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Linda Mogadam, and I'm Director of Government Affairs at Central City Association. We urge that the City Council go forward with its original course of action and allow the 45 days for a report back on all matters related to this section. This will provide the opportunity to obtain the answers to the many questions the business community and others have with regard to this section. For instance, this law was drafted over 25 years ago. What was the legislative intent with regards to this section? Why has this section not been enforced? Have all the pertinent legal concerns, especially as they relate to the Ellis Act, been addressed so that the city does not open itself up to a litany of lawsuits? Also, what is precisely meant by the factors defining cumulative effect in this section so that there is no ambiguity in enforcement? We ask that this section not be pushed forward and allow the public the opportunity to answer these and other critical questions. So we respectfully request that you allow the original course of action and provide the 45 days back for all issues related to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Kate Bartolo.
Hello, Kate Bartolo, the Core Group. I'm certainly not in opposition to enforcing existing law. The question, however, remains, as Ms. Mogadam articulated, and that is, how can one enforce existing law when we don't understand the underlying premise for the decision by the city attorney some years ago to not enforce it? What I am not suggesting is that we don't come up with solutions. I am frankly more frustrated than most on that point. I'm frustrated to the point of 30 years of a lack of set of solutions. But what I think is that we need to get an answer to that question. We need to better understand what the definition of cumulative impact is, and then we need to speed ahead. In the interim, what I would recommend is while we assess that, and we potentially, I'm hoping, can do it prior to 45 days, is that we look at and relook at the Wesson motions which dealt with tenant relocation issues. They have taken far too long to be considered by the city attorney's office, and I believe the potential for the city council vote should be sped up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is, I believe it's Susan McClellan.
Hi, my name is Susan McClellan, and I'm a tenant, and I'm for this motion to be enforced now. I ask all of the council members to especially protect your most vulnerable constituents, poor people who are being harmed, especially poor families and single parents with children, seniors and disabled people on below extreme poverty and low fixed incomes. When these people's affordable housing is taken from them, they are not able to find affordable housing to replace what they've lost. They can face financial ruin, homelessness, loss of physical and mental health, which may even lead to loss of life. Recently on the news, it was reported that the fastest growing part of the homeless population in Los Angeles are our seniors, and unrestricted condo conversions and demolitions and evictions are contributing to this. I hope and pray adequate motions are made to protect our most vulnerable citizens and to prevent the financial, physical, and mental devastation that will continue to happen if humane restrictions are not enforced and made.
Thank you very much. Next speaker will be Spartacus Cacao, followed by Joe Hari. Mr. Hari will be the next speaker.
Hi, I'm from Coalition LA. My name is Spartacus Cacao. Coalition LA is a nonprofit organization that works around tenant rights. We're here to say that we really believe that this needs to pass right now. You know, stop the condo conversions. We're having a lot of families being displaced. One of the factors that is probably not being considered is all the new schools that are being built. You know, what's happening with when all these families are being displaced, you're going to have less, students inside the classes because you're having all these condo conversions, and we know that there's not big families that are moving into these condominiums. You know, it's younger, single, couples or just single people. So it's really important that we believe that that the council members, move forward on this and decide that, it's time to stop the condo conversion while the 45 days. And I don't think it takes 45 days. I think there could something be done before the 45 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you Mr. Hari?
Yes, I am.
My name is Joe Hari, and I'm an organizer with LA Voice, an interfaith community organizing organization. We strongly support immediate implementation. As a community organizer, I'm on the front lines of the loss of LA's affordable housing stock. My community leaders live under the threat of losing their homes to condo conversions. As a community, we need to carefully consider how we want a majority of our population to live. The population that is most severely impacted are those who make our food, mow our lawns, clean our homes, raise our children, build our houses. Yes, we live in a capitalistic economy where we respect people to make a profit on their investments. But consider that one individual's need to make a big profit will severely impact the lives of all the children, elderly, and hardworking people in their building. Our communities are being torn apart. Please stop the bleeding today, not in 45 days.
Thank you. Next speaker is, I believe the last name is Popp, P-O-P-P. Cannot read the first name. And then the last speaker on this side was Marks Gutierrez.
Herb. Elena Popp, I'm a housing rights advocate and lawyer, and I've had the very difficult task of representing people who are displaced by both condominium conversion and demolition. I am speaking in support of the motion and urge you to please ensure that the folks that are facing demolition have the same protections. And it's interesting to me that it's taken us so long to figure out that we should simply enforce a law that was already studied and therefore needs no further study. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Matthew Dowd.
Hi, my name is Marks Gutierrez. I'm a resident of the 13th Council District. I commend the council for taking on this issue head on. The fewer units there are on the market, the more expensive they will be. There is a point where business interests conflict with the interests of the general community, and we have reached this point years ago. Enforcing the 5% vacancy rate protects units that are already on the market. I am under 180-day notice right now, and if you take 45 days, our project hasn't been approved. If you take 45 days, we will be out on the street. If you act now, we will win and keep our homes. Please act now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dowd, followed by Mr. Zuma Dog will be after Mr. Dowd.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've heard Zuma Dog talk about this one, and looks like with the failure of Prop H, now we have to do something that we should have been doing a long time ago, enforcing an ordinance that actually does something constructive. And I'm looking for a unanimous vote on this one. It's brought by Mr. Wesson. Let's not smoke herb on this one.
Mr. Zuma Dog is our next speaker, and then Noel Weiss will follow Mr. Zuma Dog.
Okay, first of all, Noel Weiss will be coming up. He's very good. Let me just break this down. There's been a rule since the 1981 that if you'd had less than 4% vacancy rate, you couldn't have any of these rampant condo conversions that's been going on throughout the city. Well, gee, now that all the money's been made and all the condos have been converted, they're going to start enforcing this. Herb Wesson, we've been showing up at the committee, Noel Weiss, myself, Chuck Tennant, and others. This is the greatest thing. I've been coming here 7 months fighting about all types of things. I've never seen any real reform or real change like this. This is the most important thing that's been going on the past 7 months. Congratulations, Herb Wesson. We were being really tough on you at those committee meetings at 7 in the morning. Now it's all worth it. So, again, I'm just so happy for this. What about Channel 35? All right, well, so anyway, this is going to help with the affordable housing because what's happening, also include demolitions. Herb, can we have demolitions included in this? What it's going to do is it's going to protect rent control housing because those are the first ones they convert, then the displaced tenants have nowhere to go. So thank you, City Council, for once in your life doing something good. This is almost as good as 2.7 for dog food. Yeah, yeah. Here comes Noel White.
Council, isn't it amazing what a simple request just to enforce the law will do? The thing is, the law really does have to be changed, not just merely enforced. What we're talking about is obviously the demolition situation, but the mayor ran all over town on AB 1381 saying the LA Unified School District can't even account for the vacancy rate. I mean, the dropout rate. Well, the city of Los Angeles, I don't think you're going to get an answer on the vacancy rate because apparently it's the Department of Water and Power that does the vacancy rate calculations, and they don't even know. So we're in a situation where even if this had been enforced, we'd have a better sense of the vacancy rate. What we need to do is give the tenants more money now, have real reform now. That means introducing a motion, doing for the tenants what Janice Hahn's trying to do for the hotel workers, give them more money, 9 and 20 solution. Hopefully we can find 2 members who will go for that, and then we can discuss that during the next 45 days. Whether the number is agreeable or not, it doesn't matter, but we need to get that introduced and need to get it going, and hopefully 2 of you will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our first speaker on the queue is Mr. Rosendahl.
I would defer to Mr. Wesson for one quick second on that, then I'll go forward.
It would be the appropriate time, Madam President, to bring up representatives from the Planning and City Attorney's Office to respond to any questions that members of this council might have.
Thank you. First of all, to me, this is a beautiful new moment in this whole process of condo conversions, be it demolition or existing structures. You know, people don't realize that when we sit here, we're also talking to each other on these issues. And the City Attorney's Office, the Planning Department, Herb and I have been talking even further. And just for everybody's understandings, we have amended this motion, and I'd like to get the City Attorney to respond to it. What we've done is take a potential motion that I was putting forward, and we added it to the end there. It says, on vacancy rate, provisions of 12.95.2F6 and other relevant sections. Could you please explain that to us, City Attorney, what we just did with that?
Well, I think that clarifies that we're going to be looking at the prohibition on demolition sort of within the same framework that 12.95E, or what is it, there's so many, F7 I think it is, or F6. We're going to be looking at that framework to see whether that framework can be used to deal with demolitions in the same way that it could deal with a denial of condo conversions.
And hearing that, is it also able to take the comment, I'm concerned, of these provisions also apply to the small lot ordinance? Could we also ask you to please include in your report back whether it applies to small lot subdivisions, and if not, make recommendations on how to make it apply? Could we do that too?
We can look at that as well.
Okay. Colleagues on the council, this shows real cooperation among various forces here on the City Council and with the community. We all realize, and I know in my district, that's why I put the condo conversion moratorium in, was more like the Missourian with the frying pan. Hit it over the head and get the attention of everybody onto an issue that in my district has been the most critical issue we have in keeping affordable housing in the district. I'm absolutely convinced that the strategy that Mr. Wesson and his committee and I have talked about, and you all coming back in 45 days, will help us get a better appreciation. Do you all feel comfortable with that direction?
Yes, Councilman.
Yes. Great. Well, thank you all very much, and I urge us all to vote yes on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosendahl. Ms. Gruhl is our next speaker.
Thank you, Ms. Perry, and I wanted to stand up as well because I think if you look at the statistics, the impact has been greatest in Mr. Rosendahl's district and my district on the issue of condo conversion. And many of the people we've heard from today, and I know at committee and Mr. Wesson's committee, have been residents of my district. And I want to particularly thank Larry Gross because he's worked closely with our office for many months. And we went out to Valley Village, which was our first public hearing, probably 6 months ago or so, talking about some of the projects in my district and its impact. And the difference between, which I think everyone is clear now, the difference between condo conversions and demolitions that are condo conversions in a different way, and how we can ensure within the law. I know the staff members here from Planning and City Attorney Office have spent many hours in my office as we've struggled to find ways in which to address this issue within the confines of the Ellis Act. And what we've seen before this council, I think, is a two-pronged approach, which is one, protecting the renters, which is outlawing the practice of partial Ellising. It's been creating disincentives to developers for conversions and demolitions, and created greater relocation benefits for tenants who are evicted under the Ellis Act. And so Larry Gross and I were talking this morning because several months ago we had asked the question about the 5%, and in fact had asked Planning Department in early October and then a subsequent letter October 30th about enforcing the law. I think Elena Pop said it best: we need to enforce the law that is on the books on that 5% issue. So I want to thank my colleagues to the motion that you've introduced today and the amendments, which are consistent with the direction I've been going in my district as well, to take those vacancy factors and cumulative impacts of conversion into account when making these subdivision decisions. Because we've looked at it not only on condo conversions, but others in which traffic, Chuck Tenden, who I don't know if he is still here, but Chuck has been talking about every 20 or 30 more units that you add on and the impact in the community and neighborhood. And so I know this has been a struggle for many of us to work within the confines of the law to encourage affordable housing and homeownership, but I think the 5% and the enforcement of that and what has been introduced today, I wholeheartedly support. So thank you very much, Mr. Wesson and Mr. Rosendahl and Mr. Reyes, because you have taken this, as chairs of those two committees, the responsibility very seriously, and how to look at this objectively and not piecemeal, but in the whole. And Mr. Wesson, we spent some good times out in those community meetings hearing from the public. It's of deep concern. People's lives are impacted. There's nothing more, I think, touching, or as an elected official, when someone comes up who has gotten an eviction notice and cannot find a place in their community. So we are seeing, in my district at least, a slowdown on the condo conversions because of the market. But my concern has always been, and I think in Mr. Wesson's early motions, was looking at when they have already evicted the tenants, have not torn down the building, what happens? And because the condo conversions don't occur because of the current housing market. So look forward to this coming back and support. And again, thank you for the community that's out here that have been our constant, and I see Beth Steckler, constant reminders of trying to do the right thing within the law. So thank you very much, and thank you very much, Ms. President.
Thank you very much. Mr. Reyes is our next speaker.
Thank you, Madam President. One, I want to just be very clear what we're doing here, because we've had this in our books. We weren't implementing. So I want to ask a real, just direct question, clear. What is different and how is it going to change so that we have a real sense of accountability, if you will? Please hold my time.
Jerry Burge, Land Use Division, City Attorney's Office. I think there's been some misunderstanding of our advice, and I would like to provide a background, if I might, so everyone can understand this. Of course, it's advice that we provided confidentially to the Planning Department and several council offices. This advice also did occur long before the issues that you have all been discussing. Over a year ago, the city attorney was involved in litigation. I think it was 3 lawsuits that did involve the application of relocation assistance provisions. And as a result of that, we looked with planning at our relocation assistance provisions in the hopes of amending that code section to make it clearer. And I'm talking about 12.95.2. And again, this was long before you were discussing these issues. During those conversations, we did tell the planning department that we did not believe they could deny a condominium conversion based on the vacancy rate. We stand behind that advice. We believe that to still be good advice. However, and I obviously didn't make this clear at the Housing Committee. I tried to, and I'm going to try and make this clear. However, that is not what 12.95.2 F6 says. The vacancy rate is only one of 2 findings that the planning department needs to make in order to deny a condominium conversion. It is not something that they have to do in order to grant a condominium conversion. In order to deny the condominium conversion, they would need to make 2 findings. One is the vacancy rate, and the other is to look at whether or not there's been a significant impact on the residential, based on the residential conversions. And they look at 5 factors in order to determine that. One of those factors is the adequacy of the relocation plan. So what planning has really been doing is imposing significant relocation assistance as part of their condominium conversion approvals. And I think that is a defensible way to go. Now, since that time, and now that you have been looking at this again and looking at it from a different direction, we've been discussing it with planning. Yes, this is on the books. It's always been on the books. It's always been able to be implemented, making the 2 findings, in looking at all of those factors. And now they can look at it again. They can address it. They will still be looking at the adequacy of the relocation plan. And we, the city attorney, would gladly defend any lawsuit that comes as a result of planning, applying this provision, making those findings in the plural findings, as long as they have substantial evidence to support those findings.
Okay, now planning, because this is a duet here. These 2 departments working together. Can you speak to that enforcement or respond to what the city attorney has just stated?
Yes, I think the city attorney portrayed it accurately. Mike Legrand, City Planning.
Please hold my time.
Mike Legrand, City Planning Department. That was an accurate portrayal of the advice we were given. In addition, there are other reasons to deny condominium conversions. We deny them from the MAP Act findings. We've denied one recently in the Valley due to building code issues that we observed and just a lack of consideration for the parking requirements. There's many reasons in our code that we have, as well as advisory agency policies that address condominium conversions where they're not all approved, regardless of the vacancy rate that we've utilized in cases where some buildings just aren't proper to be converted into ownership living. In terms of the processing of the entitlements and the cases for tract maps to convert to condominiums or parcel maps, the difficulty is right now, something we're going to work on in the next 45 days is the accuracy of the vacancy rate information. We want to make sure that when we use this information, we're using an accurate number. Councilman Weston's staff has some numbers that they're going to work with us on getting to look at to see if it's accurate compared to what we currently have that we could utilize to make sure that we have the best data available to us. So we're basing that decision off accurate facts. But again, in terms of the overall economic impact on the rental market, that is a very difficult finding to make. I think one of the things we're going to look at with the city attorney's office's assistance is coming back is, are there ways we can change the requirements to 1295 so we can actually have something before decision makers that's tangible, that we can get our hands around and make a finding and have the data to understand that it's not disputable and difficult to hear from the applicant side as well as from the advocate side or the existing tenants. So all those things we want to take into consideration, use this time to really fine-tune an approach that we can bring back to Plum as well as the Housing Community Economic Development Committee.
Well, I appreciate the shift of emphasis, if you will, in how we look at these cases. But just for the record, I want to say that each case will be looked at an individual basis, that the findings have to be made based on each case elements that affect a final decision. So I say that as the chair of Planning, Land Use and Management, because it'll be my committee that will have to be going to those specifics when it comes to those types of findings. But I want to thank my colleague, Councilman Herb Weston, in doing this process of actually going out into the community and understanding the dire effect and consequences of people's lives. But I did not want to be in a position where we raise expectations and have folks think that this is an automatic. It's not.
Correct.
That we need to take this on a case-by-case basis, but we are in a position, knowing that real estate moves in cycles, that we can put in place enforcement, policy language, findings, as well as statistics that will stand any court case should we be challenged if we are able to sustain our decisions. So I just want to put that on the record as we go through this process. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Parks, followed by Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just would like to say that certainly I think the fact that this law is in place and the explanation that Jerry gave certainly allows me to support it. The one thing I just wanted to stand and say that I think on the amendment to it takes us in a different course, and I would think some additional guidelines when we talk about demolition of residential apartments. And so I'm concerned that it appears we're forcing something into an existing piece of legislation that has different criteria. The main issue I'd like, and ask the staff to look at, we have a concern that as we look at different ways to save and protect different housing, I'm told that we have literally thousands of units in the city of LA that building and safety goes out or housing and they red tag because they are in violation of different zoning laws. And often the response, and the only response, is to tear down either the unit or the accompanying structure that's illegal. And yet there are little or no processes to help people who may have purchased the property in that state to fix it and maintain it, and yet we're losing thousands of units in that regard, but yet we're trying to put all of our energy in protecting the other side in the sense of conversions, and even with the amendment talking about not allowing apartments to be torn down. And I'm just wondering, is there some solution or ability to address, as we move forward, the right hand knowing what the left hand is doing? We're tearing down literally thousands of units while trying to protect what appears to be a static number of units within the city, and whether there's any ability in legislation, because most of the times we've seen the issue of the building and safety, they can't be basically, I guess, retroactively fixed because they're not within the code, such things as parking and a variety of other things. Do we have any solutions for those kinds of units that are being torn down at this time?
Mike LeGrand, Department of City Planning. One of the solutions that exists in the code, and I believe you're speaking of buildings that are non-conforming to density, or you mentioned parking also, council member, is the variance process. Our code does allow for, if there's a hardship, for variances to be applied for through the City Planning Department, heard by a zoning administrator to determine. We look at the reasons why, if it's a self-imposed hardship, if it's something that's existed for a number of years and maybe the property's been downzoned, so it's legally non-conforming and they want to do an addition to that legally non-conforming building. And so there are ways to preserve those additional units that may be over today's current density limits, but have been in the neighborhood for a long time, and they might not be conforming to our laws, but they're coming in for some kind of discretionary relief. And there is a process to go through for those types of units.
Okay, I think the missing link is often there's no connection between building and safety's order and the person in the community understanding that planning may have a solution. So they get this order, they tear it down, and there appears to be no communication between planning and building and safety if our goal is to save some of these units.
Actually, we do have a pretty extensive communication with building and safety. It may just not be seen at your level on the council. One of the ways we do it is through our case management units, through building and safety and planning, and the entire construction liaison network in the city, is we steer applicants like that who have these types of hardships to our case management unit so that they can have someone from the city family assist them in the paperwork, the processing of those types of entitlements. And one of the things that some of the decision makers have used with the support of the housing department is to look at if someone has an additional unit, for example, on a building and they want to come in for compliance, the zoning administrator many times will require that unit to be reserved for affordable housing, being that it is non-conforming to density and there is a financial benefit of having that additional density. When they are granted, a lot of times we see hybrid conditions that require that unit be registered for affordable housing for very, very low income or moderate income. But the case management unit, I think, is the key to getting those people to understand that there are some options that can be reviewed. In some cases they're denied, other cases they're approved. It's really on the individual circumstances.
Okay. Let me ask you, then why would we be, if we have all that coordination, why would we be losing literally thousands of units in that regard if we have all those safeguards to give them that direction?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure on the thousands of units we're losing in terms of demolition, if that's from buildings that are non-conforming, or if that's just demolitions taking place due to progression, new buildings being built and other buildings being demolished to be replaced by, for example, new condominiums or new apartment buildings. I'm not exactly sure.
Because it's our understanding is the former, and that people are being cited, they're being tagged, they go forward and follow building and safety. It is, to our understanding, not the inventory of buildings that people are tearing down just to build new ones. They're actually maintaining the primary structure, but the answer is to tear down the additional structure or the illegal part of the structure. So we do not see them basically building other buildings.
On a weekly basis, we have numerous cases coming in for these types of variances. Again, there's findings in the code we have to make that are pretty stringent in terms of the hardship, but I'll be happy to meet with my colleagues at Building and Safety and discuss an approach that would cover more of these units.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. And again, I just want to thank everybody's participation in this. And Mr. Wesson knows that I'm still pressing for the condo conversion moratorium. But frankly, if in 45 days you all come back with the language that we want, it will have done even more than what my condo conversion moratorium would have done, because it will be a permanent solution to this incredible crisis we're facing in this great city. So we keep it out there, the condo conversion moratorium, with the strength of what we're saying just for my district. But frankly, Mr. Wesson, what you've done is far superior overall to giving our city an overall sense of protection. And I look forward to city staff coming back with recommendations that make me comfortable enough that I withdraw that condo conversion moratorium. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Reyes.
Look, colleagues, the significance of this action shouldn't be understated. When we look at what's happening in terms of trends in the city, some folks hesitate to use the word gentrification, but the bottom line is, in many of our neighborhoods that's become desirable, we are losing units. We're losing units in neighborhoods that investors in the past did not want to enter. With this type of effort, we can at least start calculating and measuring these impacts. With the advance of the Gold Line, new construction, apartments that right now are being looked at for conversion, when you look at areas like along the Expo Line that I can see attracting new levels of interest, the East Side Line, these are all traditional neighborhoods that did not have that attention. So it's important and incumbent upon us to have the type of policies in place that gives us that ability to stand back and say, what are the impacts, what are the trends, what's happening in that community plan, and act accordingly. So I appreciate where we're at today, because I believe in the upcycle, we'll be much more prepared than we were 8-9 months ago when the heat, when it was red hot and the market was turning over at a rate that no one could really estimate until the aftermath of those who are right now trying to find a roof over their heads because they have been pushed out. So thank you very much, colleagues and staff, for their hard work, and we got to get this in the books and get our implementation and enforcement policy and coordination done sooner than later. It says 45 days. We have holidays coming. We know what happens at City Hall and holidays. Are 45 days realistic?
Councilman Michael LeGrand, City Planning. Yeah, I believe all three of us will be here during the holidays, or the majority of those holidays. And staff, along with the City Attorney's Office and the Housing Department, we've already had multiple meetings due to the work of yourself and your colleagues in the Housing Community Development Economic Committee, as well as the Plum Committee. And your direction at the last meeting was very strong to come back as soon as possible, and we intend to do so. We've already been drafting ordinances and working on similar issues that this ties into, and this motion helps amplify.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss?
Ask, and just for my own clarity, because I have not followed the entirety of the conversation, is there a period of time during which the City Attorney's Office knew about this law and did not enforce it, or is there a period of time during which the City Attorney's Office did not know about the law or did not appreciate its applicability?
Again, for the record, Jerry Burge, City Attorney's Office. The City Attorney's Office, of course, does not enforce this law. It is not a law that is enforced. It is a law that is applied, and it is applied by the Planning Department. And the way they apply the law is to make findings in order to deny a condominium conversion. The City Attorney's Office knew about this law, We've always known about this law, and we have, as I said before, been ready, willing, and able to defend any litigation that arises as a result of any denial based on substantial evidence in the record.
Well, so was it not applied by the planning department, or it was applied by the planning
Well,
department?
again, I believe what the planning department it hasn't been something that you would know that they've been applying, because it's only required if you deny, and you have to make the findings if you deny the condominium conversion. You don't have to make the findings in reverse, if you will, in order to approve a condominium conversion. They've denied condominium conversions generally on other grounds involving parking.
So it hasn't been applied, generally speaking, it has not been applied?
I would say that generally speaking, it has not been applied in a way to deny a map based on these findings. But again, what I think has been happening is that they have been imposing very strong relocation assistance requirements, and that is one of the factors that you use.
Was there a recommendation that it not be applied?
By the city attorney's office?
Yes.
No, again, the city attorney did advise that a law that required denial of a condominium conversion based solely on the vacancy rate, we did not believe a court would uphold such a law. That is the conversation that we had with the planning department. That's not what this law says. This law uses only the vacancy rate as one factor. It also requires a second finding to be made involving significant impact, and looking at all these factors, including a relocation assistance package.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other speakers on the queue, so... Excuse me, yes.
I'm sorry, Madam President, there is a substitute motion, so the first vote would be on the question of whether to substitute Mr. Wesson's substitute motion for what's on the agenda.
Correct, and he introduced that motion. So we would first vote on whether to substitute.
The question of whether to substitute, right.
Okay, so we will open the roll on that item, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
13 ayes. And now the substitute motion is before council.
Substitute motion is now before us. Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
13 ayes. And there is an amending motion that Mr. Rosendahl introduced that would amend the substitute motion, so council would now vote on that.
Mr. Wesson.
No, wait, it's my understanding, yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, let me just...
It's been withdrawn. Okay.
Well, let me just clarify. There was some language, I believe, added to, there was a clause added to the substitute motion, and so...
President, into the record, because the clause is really gives us the comfort level that we all feel is important. I mentioned it in my opening comments. It's at the furthermore substitute motion at the very last paragraph. It says that in 45 days on the feasibility of prohibiting multifamily residential demolitions based on the vacancy rate provisions of 12.95.2 F6 and other relevant sections. This gives us the opportunity to go forward on both the demolitions issue and the other.
And I believe there was also a suggestion that we look at small lot subdivisions.
In fact, on that one, we're hoping that you can come back on that and give us comfort that that issue will also be affected by it in that 45-day period.
Thank you. So we have completed that item.
That's right.
The next item is item number 13. I think
Do we need to vote on that, open the roll and close the vote on it?
I don't believe so,
Okay,
Madam
as long
Clerk.
as we're clearer. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Thank you all. Item number 13, I know there was an amending motion submitted, 13A. No, Mr.
And that was called special by Councilmember Cardenas, and the motion has been distributed.
I think this is on the school safety prosecutors program. Mr. Wiesar, did you want to speak to the amending motion?
Yes, please. I have introduced a motion. Do I have to read it into the record? I have introduced an amending motion, item 13A. We heard this item in Mr. Park's Budget and Finance Committee. We discussed the importance of having this project because I remember when I was on the school board, We implemented the safety school zone, but we needed to do much more than just put signs all around our schools to say that we will heighten penalties for those individuals violating certain laws. And I think this gives the actual hammer and the vehicle to enforce the heightened penalties that we now have when people disrupt the ability for students to learn around our schools. But the amending motion that I put in would allow for an additional deputy city attorney, prosecutor attorney to be at Wetmore School. I did express my concern at the committee level that we were putting some of these prosecutors in some of our new schools where we didn't have a baseline of performance such that we could properly evaluate whether this additional prosecutor is helping in reducing crime, is helping with allowing students to flourish and learn without the distraction of people around who are not allowing them to learn. So, but I think with this additional position, we will be able to provide at least one more deputy prosecutor to go at an existing school, I believe, and I hope. So thank you so much. I think this is a very good thing to ensure and continue to support our children as they come to and from school. Thank you.
Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you. Apparently, there was a middle school that was targeted in the East Valley. They call it East Valley School Number 1. That school is not going to open until October of next year, 2007. So that being the case, what school is going to be have this benefit since that school is not going to be open?
We have selected Venice High School and Pacific Division.
And how did you make that basis? How did you determine from the East Valley, since that one wasn't going to be ready, you want to do this program over in Venice?
Well, we decided to take established school sites, so we took Panorama High School and Arleta High School, which are out in the valley, that just opened up in October of this year, that are located, particularly Panorama High School, in a pretty heavily impacted area with gangs and crime. In fact, we've got the Blythe Street Gang in Junction is in that area. And we'll also work with the feeder middle schools. We also picked Fremont High School, which is in South LA, and its feeder schools. And then we selected, because the middle school wasn't going to open up till fall 2007, and we weren't prepared to be able to do that school right now anyway with just 2 prosecutors. Budget and Finance Committee asked us to look at an established school site, so we looked at Venice High School, which is impacted heavily, again, by gang activity. You've got the Venice Shoreline Crips, the V13, the Culver City Boys. There was a recent homicide there of a student, and I know Councilman Rosendahl is
I'm very happy for Mr. Rosendahl and also for Venice Middle School. It's good you have this program. I believe in this program. That's why I was excited to see schools in my district have this program. What happened with Sun Valley Middle School? That I would imagine that would be a perfect school for this program.
We decided to start with the high schools first because in discussions with Los Angeles Police Department and LA School of Police, it was felt that a lot of programs that we have in the city right now are geared towards elementary and middle schools, and the high schools had kind of a dearth of programs.
So you moved away from having it at a middle school in altogether?
The one that's supposed to open up in fall 2007, however, I can give you, I've got the list of the middle schools. For example, for East Valley New High School number 2, which is Arleta, which in Foothill, we'd be looking at Sepulveda Middle School, Plummer Elementary School, Pacoima Middle School, Haddon Elementary School, Sharp Avenue Elementary School, and Beachy Avenue Elementary School. And again, our hope is that we can expand the program next year, and because we did not have a dearth of schools that would really benefit from this type of program.
I don't understand what you mean when you say you didn't have schools that would benefit from this program?
I mean, there's over 600 LAUSD schools located in the city of LA. First we started with what were called the priority schools, as identified with a working group for safer school communities, where they had the kids map the campus site itself in terms of dangerous locations and also the community around the school. So we started with those 10 schools. Then we also looked at the 19 high school clusters that the mayor's office is looking at for that particular program, met with LAPD and LA School Police, and the bottom line, there are a lot of schools in the city of LA that could benefit from this program, but we decided to try to get a variety, one on South LA, one in the Valley. The ideal situation would be we'd have 4 school safety prosecutors, so we'd hit the West Side, East Side, the Valley, and South LA.
Okay. Because one of the schools that is being contemplated, one of the high schools happens to be Pauley High School as well. And Pauley High School is actually, Byrd Middle is one of the feeder schools to Pauley High School. So is Pauley High School involved in this program?
Again, we took, because I think I may be confusing your question, the middle school that we dropped, I know it as East Valley Middle School number 1. That is scheduled to open in fall of 2007. The committee requested us to, because it's not yet open, to look at established school sites. So in place of that middle school, we selected Venice High School. But I think it's important to note that in all the high schools that we're selecting, that we're looking at the high school cluster, so we'd be looking at the feeder schools as well, the middle schools and elementary.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Labange is not at his seat. Oh, you want to, you're the next speaker, Mr. Labange.
Am I still here, Tommy? I'll go ahead. Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. If I could ask a question of our city attorney. How many neighborhood prosecutors do we have citywide now, both in the police and other areas?
Well, we've got one that's assigned to each of the 19 police divisions, so we have 19.
Plus supervision.
Right, Rampart, we doubled up. We also we got 9 additional neighborhood prosecutors that we farmed out not only to the police divisions, but to the citywide nuisance abatement program. So each police division now has access to one neighborhood prosecutor that would be handling criminal remedies, one neighborhood prosecutor assigned to citywide nuisance abatement program looking at problem properties.
And then this is an additional 3
Yes.
for citywide?
Yes.
Did you know of a council action requesting you look into expanding neighborhood prosecutors as it relates to land use?
I've heard about it, but I haven't looked at it. I think it's a great idea.
You think it's a great idea? Okay, the budget's coming up. I think we'll try to articulate that. I speak on behalf of a lot of community organizations throughout the city. When they look to our city attorney's office, they'd love to see the similar program that's so successful with the police department as it relates to the land use and et cetera. So thank you for that. Talk to you later.
Mr. Rosendahl, please.
Thank you, Madam President, for this. And I want to thank Mr. Cardenaz's comments. They were very thoughtful. I obviously want to thank Jose Huizar for putting this motion in that I second. And, you know, Augustine Contreras was a young man that was slain in the parking lot at Venice High School. And when we in budget discussed this whole issue, the ability to shift resources, I appreciate the city attorney's office in working with us on that. And I ask for an aye vote. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to, we had a discussion at the Budget and Finance Committee, and we've gone through the different schools. What I was wondering is that when we talk about the first phase, you're going to be doing a lot of research and surveying. Would that be the place in which you should be making determination of what schools after the surveying, or is the intent is that the surveying will only be site-specific to the schools you've identified?
The survey right now will be site-specific to the selected schools, but in selecting those particular schools, again, we sat down with LAPD and the LA School Police and took 10 priority schools as identified by this working group for safe schools communities and ran CCADs. In other words, we looked at the criminal history. We went 1,000 feet out. First we started with the school safety zone to look at the pattern of crime, and then did actual site visits and factored in nuisance properties, for example, in the Panorama area, what the housing stock looked like. such that we knew that it could use a variety of resources from within our office. On a go-forward basis, we would do that same analysis. And I think that would be helpful to the council if we had a list of schools with the information about the criminal history in the surrounding neighborhood, housing stock, et cetera.
And so this is modeled after the neighborhood prosecutor to some degree?
It's modeled after the neighborhood prosecutor in the sense that, you know, they're not working in an office, they'll be out in the field working very closely with the school police and LAPD. The difference is, I consider it a pure form of community prosecution because it's actually identifying a community, a neighborhood, versus our neighborhood prosecutors are assigned and they're covering an entire police division. It's very much like what I call our neighborhood block projects or the Safer City initiatives. It's a geographic based.
Okay. You know, the one thing, and again, I think people may not understand the holistic approach that you're taking. The first thing I think that comes to mind is the prospects of that is crime-related totally, which then causes a concern as to why those schools, when we have areas that have significant more of a crime rate, maybe you can articulate the larger issue of what you're surveying, that why these schools were selected and what you intend to impact.
I mean, what we're looking at is how that surrounding neighborhood impacts the school in terms of what came first, a school with low scores, low attendance, or the fact that the neighborhood surrounding them is impacted by a variety of factors, including crime, vacant properties, vacant lots, zoning violations, the housing stock. And the idea was to, again, a collaborative effort with building safety, the housing department, planning, LAPD, and school police to impact that. Because if we have found that when we don't include crime prevention efforts, such as our Kid Watch program, anti-truancy programs, it's like we're all on parallel tracks. And the idea was to just have it all gel.
Okay. And one more time, could you just give, with this extra position that 13A is requesting, that gives you 3 attorneys and 1 paralegal, so you have 4 bodies. Tell me again what schools now have been formally picked.
We have selected Fremont and 77th, Panorama High School in Van Nuys, Arleta High School in Foothill, and Venice High School in Pacific Division.
Okay, and when you say those schools, you're talking about the feeders that come to them?
Yes, the idea would be that if we're successful, and I believe we will be, around the immediate neighborhood surrounding the high school, we would continue to bump out to the feeder schools.
And then what number of schools do you think you'll impact with that feeder school approach?
The feeder schools, typically with elementary and middle, there's another 5 schools.
Okay,
at
so
least.
you could be impacting 20-plus schools?
Yes.
All right. The other issue I'd like to comment on is that just so that the city attorney and everybody's on the same plane, is that we support the amending motion 13A, but we have a verbal agreement with the city attorney's office because these are sub-authority positions that they, other than the UB money that we're moving forward on, that this will be absorbed in this year and next year, or whenever year city attorney keeps the program, within your existing budget. So it's not, these have not been regularized, they will be maintained as sub-authorities and within existing resources.
Yes.
Okay. And then the final question I have is, how long do you think the pilot, when will you get, do you think you'll get assessment of how valuable and whether this is something that eventually you may ask to be a permanent program or expansion? How many budget years are you looking at?
We're hoping to have the attorneys on board and assigned to those schools probably mid-January. I would expect, we will report back to council by the end of that fiscal year. It's hard to tell in neighborhoods. As you know, a lot of them, you're not going to turn them around overnight, but I do think we will make an impact on those issues as defined by the parents of the students there. One of the things we'd like to do right away is a tool that LAUSD used, I believe it was with USC, where they did a assessment with the students, where they asked them to map unsafe places on their way to and from school, places they avoid, as well as dangerous places on campus. And we would like to take that assessment tool and take it to all of the selected schools.
And the other issue, are these year-round schools or more traditional? school
I
calendar?
think most of them are now traditional because of the construction of the new schools.
I mean, so they're on the 3-month summer vacation type situation?
You know, I would have to check. I'm not absolutely sure, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if there are year-round schools or versus the traditional scheduling, what do you do when they're off?
Well, I think the misperception is that we're just dealing with campus crime. In fact, we're dealing with the neighborhoods surround the school, which doesn't,
Okay.
crime around the schools doesn't stop during the summer months.
Yeah.
So if anything,
So
we'll
the
be
school
just
being
as busy.
in session doesn't drive your work, it's the surrounding community around and all the issues around the schools?
Right, although we
Okay.
will be working closely with the schools to put together some crime prevention programs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. There are no further speakers in the queue on that item. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote?
11 ayes.
Madam Clerk, Mr. Wesson, I believe, has a special motion for Rule 23.
Yes, and the city attorney will speak to the findings.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll cite the facts of that were presented to me by the maker of the motion for the council's consideration of the adequacy of the findings. Since the posting of today's agenda, city staff has learned that the businesses affected by the recent sinkhole at 5939 Rodeo Road are in need of an advance of funds in order to relocate. Immediate action is required to keep the businesses running during the emergency repair work. Council must first make findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2 before considering the substantive motion.
Okay, let's open the roll with respect to the findings. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
All right, Mr. Wesson?
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Members, as our city attorney said, on Wednesday, November 1st, at about 2 a.m. in the morning at 5939 Rodeo Road in the district I happen to represent, there was a huge sinkhole that occurred, closing 3 businesses. One was an auto body shop where the ground actually fell into what was determined to be a partially collapsed sewer line. The underlying cause of the collapse is currently being investigated. I think that it's in the best interest of the city to do what we can to help these 3 businesses that were affected by this. Building and Safety has red tagged the building. The Bureau of Engineers will be there for 3 to 4 months making repairs until the Board of Public Works makes a final determination on the cause of the sewer collapse. I think that we should move forward to do what we can to relocate these businesses, and it's also important that the city act immediately to avoid potential exposure from the loss of these businesses. So basically what this motion does, it gives direction to Bureau of Engineering and the Controller's Office to expedite assistance to the businesses affected. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wesson. There are no further speakers in the queue. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wesson, would you like that item to go forthwith? Next order of business.
Next item, Madam President, is item number 58, and that was called special for a card from the public.
Our speaker on this item is Mr. Matthew Dowd.
Hey, thank you very much. It's great to be back on the Zuma Dog Show, Channel 35, the Princess Zine merry-go-round. You know, we're getting to the end of the meeting, folks. The dog and ponies are up. I just want to remind you, though, to stay on Channel 35 for the Police Commission. We made some great comments about Chief Bratton, too. but that's
He
coming
appears
up
to be
later
off
in the
topic
show.
on this matter.
Okay, this one, item 58, you can see it along the bottom of the screen now. It's the annual Harley-Davidson toy ride. We're absorbing the fees and costs. I'm in favor of this one. This is a good one because it's sponsored by the Glendale Harley-Davidson Owners Group. And if it was Harley-Davidson, the corporate entity, I'd be against it. But and I also want to see our great-looking 15th District Council member up in the President's chair again. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, there are no further speakers in the queue, so would you please open the roll? Did you want to speak on this item, Mr. Rosen? Let's open the roll, close the roll. Mr. Wesson has made Mr. Weiss has made a request to send this item.
No, item 27, actually, from earlier today. Send that forthwith. Can you handle that? Okay.
All right, we just close the roll on the item that was before us.
12 ayes.
Thank you. Next item. Mr. Rosen.
I'd like to reconsider an item of last Wednesday's council, item 49. There's been new evidence presented to us that suggests that we send this back to Budget and Finance Committee into closed session for further consideration. I'd like us to reconsider item 49 of last Wednesday.
And for the record, the council file number on that is 06-1305, and it was a closed session item.
And for the record, that's the Tenny Pierce versus City lawsuit.
I believe we have to open the roll for reconsideration, or open the...
Moment when one of our colleagues is not in the room, just have a phone.
Mr. City Attorney, can we get some direction from you on the procedure?
Well, it's, there's a motion to reconsider, and that pursuant to the council rules, that motion is not debatable. So after the motion to reconsider, whether it is successful or not, then it'll be before you.
Mr. Parks, if you could press your microphone, or so we can do this in order. No, I'm sorry, just go ahead. If you want to speak, press your buttons so that I can call on you.
It's not...
I'm trying to. I'm trying to make it work.
City attorneys advised us that we cannot debate whether
I don't want to debate, I just want to know what we're
Right.
considering.
For information, this is the matter that was item number 49 on last Wednesday's agenda. It's the settlement recommendation in the matter entitled Tenny Pierce versus City, Los Angeles Superior Court case number BC 345845.
Want to open the roll?
No.
Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
6 ayes, 6 noes. That fails, Madam President. The next item then for council's consideration is item number 60, and that was called special for cards from the public.
Item 60 is before us. I have no cards in here for item 60. Excuse me, first speaker on that item is Mr. Matthew Dowd.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I wanted to comment on this one last week, November the 8th, and but there's something else just caught my eye as well, and that's the substitute motion. It would appear that we didn't know whether this was the 33rd or the 34th, because last week's motion we were declaring the 33rd Annual American Music Awards, but now I notice we've substituted and it's the 34th. So let's figure out which one it is, first of all. Secondly, I am in favor of this one because I like these generic music awards. This is the American Music Awards. And it's not the Latino, it's not the African American, it's not the white heterosexual music awards, it's not the Elton John Music Awards, it's the American Music Awards. And I'm in favor of this, and I think we should make all of our events generic and non-discriminatory. This is a great one. So let's give this a unanimous aye. Let's have the city attorney determine for the record whether it is actually the 33rd or the 34th, because we've got conflicting information. So anyway, yeah, well, I'll wait for that clarification at the end of the comment period. Once again, stay on Channel 35. Police Commission's coming right up, Mr. Attorney. City Attorney, thank you for the correction.
Mr. Zumadog, next speaker.
First of all, Councilmember Perry, I don't think you've done the right thing one time. I don't think you've got me right once. Every time I turn in a card, you magically don't find it. You magically show no cards, and I have to go out of order.
He appears not to be speaking to this item.
Okay, well, now let me talk about item 60, rather. There's never been a bigger hell no in the history of Zumadog coming to City Hall. This is $20,000 for a special event fee for the American Music Awards. That's owned and run by Dick Clark. That guy's got more money than Eli Broad and Dick Reardon put together. Okay, so why should the city, with the affordable housing crisis, with Skid Row problems, with all types of problems in the city, why do we have to pony up $20,000 for Dick Clark's commercial entity? We've already read Jack Weiss's memo from January 2002 declaring that there's been abuse and this is only supposed to be going for events open to the public. Dick Clark better give me a free ticket to this event, because if we're paying for it for city money, it's supposed to be open for the public, non-commercial events. This is $20,000. That's huge. And here's the negative impact, okay? Then when you have the little old ladies, or you have the people that want their own religious or school or kids or youth programs, well, sorry, there's no money. We just gave Dick Clark and ABC $20,000 for their thing. So I urge City Council for the first time and the most emphatically ever, we need to see some no votes on this. Send a message. Even if it goes through, I want to see some no votes, and we're going to be watching, because you're taking $20,000 and giving it to Dick Clark and ABC when we should be giving this to the community for nonprofit. And then I want free admission to the American Music Awards. All right, and I still got 31 seconds on this. So first of all, I say we all got to show up in front of the American Music Awards and get free admission, because we're paying $20,000. You got all types of crises. You know, why don't we take this $20,000 and shelter some homeless people? Why don't we put this into the mayor's defense budget to sue against AB 1381? He needs the money so bad. Why don't we take this $20,000 and pay it for the $2.7 million for dog food? I want to see some no votes for the first time. I'm not kidding.
There are no speakers in the queue. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 1 no.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next order of business.
Madam President, do you wish to clear the desk before going into closed session?
All right, we will go into closed session, and I can ask that the chamber be cleared.
Madam President, council has motions for posting and referral.
All right, we're going to clear the desk before we go into closed session, so.
And there's an excuse on the desk. Councilmember Rosendahl requests to be excused Friday, December 15th for city business that meets council policy.
Mr. Rosendahl's excused.
And that clears the desk for a closed session.
All right. All right, we're going into closed session, so if we can clear the chamber.
Madam Clerk, we have completed our closed session on an item. Would you report appropriately?
There's no item to report, Mr. President, and that would complete the council's agenda.
Completes the council agenda. Members, are there any announcements at this time? Recognized for announcement, Ms. Janice Hahn of the 15th Council District.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. President Labange. I just wanted to make an announcement about a meeting this Thursday, November 16th, from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Watts Senior Center. It will be Community Connect, and representatives from the Port of Los Angeles will have an open house at the Watts Senior Center to let the community know things that they should know about the port, like port security, business opportunities, jobs, the LA waterfront, and some of the new environmental initiatives being proposed by the Port of Los Angeles. So again, it's going to be at the Watts Senior Center, located at 1657 East Century Boulevard in Watts. Come find out more about the Port of Los Angeles, which is due south down the Harbor Freeway from Watts.
Without the port, we wouldn't be here there, Ms. Hahn. We thank you for that work and that efforts, and have a good meeting in Watts that evening. Any other announcements, members? No other announcements. I ask us all to rise, and as we do rise, we do want to thank Project Restore for the new seating arrangement here in the area there. And as we do rise, I see a great wave from Mr. Parks of the 8th District for announcements. I'm sorry, Mr. Parks.
Let me just give a couple. We have a Exposition Construction Authority meeting on Thursday, November 16th at Dorsey High School at 6:30 to 8:30 that deals with the project design for the middle section, the 8.5 middle section of the line. We also have on Friday, November the 17th at 5:30 to 8 o'clock at the African American Museum in Exposition Park, the annual 8th District State of the 8th and highlight for our students and neighborhood council and block clubs to honor them. And so those are two things we'd like to make sure the public's aware of.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. I have a correction on the new seating. It was done by Mr. Garcetti. I apologize. I had wrong information handed to me, so I apologize for that misinformation. Any other announcements? Mr. Rosendahl, any announcements?
No, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Standing for adjourning motions at this time. I'd like to call on adjourning motions. Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. It's with great sadness I announce Miguel Rubalcaba, who passed away on November 5th, 2006. Miguel arrived in the United States 55 years ago as a young man on vacation. He told his parents he wanted to visit the United States, and during this time he decided this was the country he wanted to live in for the rest of his life. Miguel worked various odd jobs and entered the restaurant business as a busboy and retired as a cook. As his children grew, he involved himself with their activities at school, St. Agatha Cathedral, Daniel Murphy, and Bishop Conady. He became active in politics with his daughter Adriana, walking precincts, phone banking, and finally celebrating his citizenship. He enjoyed discussing local politics, playing dominoes with his grandchildren, and spending time with his wife. He resided in Council District Number 10 and 8, but always thought of himself as a resident of Los Angeles, the entire city. He will be sorely missed by all who knew him and loved him, and he touched many lives. He is survived by his wife Juanita, children Miguel, Adriana, Jaime, and Roberto, and 6 grandchildren and many, many friends.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to have us adjourn today in memory of one of my staff members' fathers. Richard Peck was the father of Tina Quebec, who's my executive assistant in my office, and he passed away on November 7th at the age of 81. He joined the Navy at the age of 16 and fought in World War II, and after his service, he went to work for Pan Pacific Canneries on Terminal Island, where he retired in the mid-'80s. He met his wife, Elia, at the VFW in Wilmington. They were together for 22 years. They loved to travel, and for many years, Richard and Elia played Mr. and Mrs. Santa for disabled children. He enjoyed fishing, bingo, coin collecting, and gambling. I attended his service on Friday morning, and it was clear that even though he was not the biological father of the children of Elia, it was clear that they had really welcomed him into their hearts and considered him their father, and were very grateful that he was there for their mother for 22 years and seemed to have really brought the joy back into her life and exposed her to some great traveling and activities. It was a very touching service. He's survived by his wife, Elia, his children, Bea, Tina, Jackie, Lupe, and Rafaela. He has 16 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren. It's obvious that he's going to be very, very missed by that family. I'd also like us to adjourn in the memory of Richard Syverson. Richard was a lifetime resident of San Pedro. He passed away on November 2nd at the age of only 69 after a battle with pancreatic cancer. Richard attended 7th Street Elementary, Dana Junior High, Mary Starr High School, and he also proudly served his country as a member of the U.S. Navy. He married Janice Lenahan, and together they had 5 children. Richard was a prominent building contractor for over 30 years and collected restored classic cars in his retirement. It must have been just maybe 2 weeks before he passed that I was actually in a nail salon having some work done on my nails, and there was this man's son taking his father, who was clearly very, very ill, taking his father to have a little, have a pedicure in the salon, just to bring him a little relaxation, a little, comfort in the last days. He was sitting next to me, and he was so glad to have finally been able to meet me. He shook my hand, and he naturally had a constituent complaint, which was his street that he felt had been neglected many, many years by the city of Los Angeles. So I pledged to him, and I'm certainly saying it now on TV, that Mr. Syverson, we will fix your street. I'm sorry that it didn't come before you left this earth, but know that your wish certainly will be fulfilled. But I witnessed a son who clearly loved his father, and a son who really was very proud of his father and wanted to give him a few moments of comfort at the end. He's survived by his loving wife of 48 years, Janice. His children, Mary, Richard, and Michael was the son that had brought him in to the salon, Paul and Peggy. He's also survived by his 7 loving grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. God bless Richard Syverson.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Parks, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask that we adjourn in memory of Billy Hairston, who's a retired L.A. police officer. He died at the age of 76 in Moreno Valley on October 31st. He was born in 1930 in Martinsville, Virginia. In fact, he was the first person to gain a scholarship to attend, a golf scholarship to attend West Virginia State University. He also was in the military, U.S. Air Force. When he left LAPD, he practiced law for over 37 years in Inglewood, California, and was active in many community activities. He's survived by his wife and a host of other relatives. His funeral services were Saturday, November the 4th. Also asked that we adjourn in memory of Mrs. Leona Mae Johnson, who passed away on her services are November 11th at Agape Church located at 12700 South Main Street. She's the wife of Mr. Robert Johnson, the mother of Sergeant Lloyd Scott of LAPD, and she's survived by her son, her husband, and a host of relatives. And I also asked that we adjourn in memory of Ed Bradley, one of the renowned members of the 60 Minute team, born in 1941 in Philadelphia, where he started off as a disc jockey in the Philadelphia area. He was one of the first reporters on the scene when the riots broke out in North Philadelphia. He moved to WCBS Radio, an all-new station in New York. He worked there for 3.5 years. Then he moved to Paris, France, where he joined CBS in their Paris office in '71. He later was a member of the went to the military, or not military, into Vietnam to cover the Vietnam War for CBS from 55 to 75, I guess 1975. And then he was injured and wounded and was sent back to the United States. He worked on 60 Minutes, and I think he may hold the record. I think he had 20 Emmys that he received, along with a number of other national awards. And so just recently passed away to leukemia.
Yeah, all members, and most impressive journalist. Remember his images as a reporter during Vietnam, and also I remember his most interesting interview with Muhammad Ali when he had so many great. Ed Bradley was great, 65 years old, too young of leukemia. All members on that. Members, Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'd ask that you join me in adjourning in memory of John Joseph Reardon, who was the husband of Sandra Yamani, who many of you probably know. He died very young. He was born in 1950, and for several years he devoted his life to public service in Washington, D.C., and then married Sandra in 1988 and was involved in working with the Office of the Federal Public Defender here in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Members, I ask we adjourn in memory of Joe Jagger, the father of Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones. He lived to be 93 years old. He was a school teacher and certainly was an influence, I'm sure, on his son, who's still touring the world and will be here next week. Joe Jagger, 93. Madam Clerk, we're going to call the roll, and I have an announcement after you call the roll. Please call the roll. It's legal because I'm standing here. The council is adjourned. Plum Committee starts at 2:15. The Planning and Land Use Committee of City of Los Angeles City Council starts at 2:15. Good afternoon.